Fire Chief Trout. Here. Police Administrative Assistant Rice. Here.
We have the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we turn tonight's proceedings over to Lisa Bagat, our Finance Director, Ron Searle has just a few comments that he would like to make. Ron?
Just would like to mention that this is the first in several series of budget workshops. We have another one scheduled for Wednesday the 21st. And then we've also posted a notice for a possible third workshop on April 22nd, depending on how our discussions go this evening and on the 21st. The other thing I wanted to mention is, if time permits, because we've sort of advertised this as going till 10 o'clock, I'd like just a brief executive session to give some information out to the board for consideration for future discussion. If we don't have time, then we can do that at the next meeting.
That's fine.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Lisa?
Ryan, was there anything else that you wanted to add at all before we go, or are we all set?
No.
Okay. Thank you all for coming. As Ron mentioned, this is the first of our series of budget workshops. We will be doing an overview of all the funds that we're going to be presenting in the series. We will discuss some of the major things that are contained in the budget, and after we discuss those, we will then go into some of the departments and divisions in detail with the proposed budgets, and we have members from the staff of those departments available to answer questions if you were to have any. I want to thank everybody for coming to the meetings, for the board for their support in our discussions that we've had prior to this and assembling this budget. Of course, to my staff for all the hard work and dedication in putting it together, and really all the departments for the past 6 months we've been working on the budget, which is what we do, and it's a culmination of here, and really appreciate the support and the input and the dedication of all the staff involved in this. It's a collaborative effort. So we have a couple of things we'll be looking at.
Lisa, excuse me, just let me add that we as a board appreciate all the efforts that you have exerted with your staff and all the departments and Ron Searle and moving ahead and making all these adjustments, mainly cuts in the budget in every possible area. As I've mentioned before, it's an area that we've never been into before with such serious budgetary problems. And we are very happy with the staff and how they worked well with us. We understand that we've presented some very difficult budget constraints for everyone, but we're trying to do the best that we can and maintain the operation of the village and the provision of services to all of our residents as best we can in spite of all of these cuts. So thank you to everyone, and as we move forward, it's not going to be an easy task that we're going to start on tonight, but it has to be dealt with, and I'm sure everybody will do just that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Ron. We have a budget binder that we have put together and have passed out that is in front of you that you've had for review. We also have a PowerPoint to accompany that with some overview information, and handouts for that PowerPoint are available for all of you, and on the back for anyone in the audience. So we'll be flipping back and forth from the information contained in the budget binder as well as the information in the PowerPoint. So I will reference that as we go throughout. You know, if you look in your book or if you go to the binder, you'll see the information. We're going to start with the binder in section 1, which is our overview of all of our funds, what we call the fund summary. And what we have is an overview of each of the different departments and areas, and I'm going to explain, we've got a couple of things on here that are different than we've seen in prior years, but started to see last year when we had a revenue stream issue. So What we have in the general fund for budgeted revenues this year is $18,655,025, and the budget itself currently contains expenses in the general fund of $18,956,080, which is a deficit, currently a projected net deficit of $295,655. This is after preliminary cuts that we will be discussing in a couple of sections that were put in by the staff to reduce the budget to get to this point. We now have given some ideas or some possible things for consideration for the board that we have included in here as well that we'll be talking about. It was to the point where we felt that we made the cuts that we felt were reasonable and that we could operate in, and beyond that, we felt that those were decisions that we really needed guidance from the board on, and what's your direction, what's your feeling, how do you want us to proceed with these? So it's not that we've submitted a deficit budget thinking that this is what we were going to pass. It was always with the intention of getting direction of the board, some assistance for how they'd like to see us reduce this additional $295,655. So the preliminary draft that we have here is in that form, and then we intend to go and make changes now after these workshops to make the adjustments that the board sees fit. Also, any of the cuts that we've already put in here, anything that we've listed is up for discussion. It is ultimately the board's decision to either keep that in there just because the staff felt that it was appropriate to put it in there doesn't necessarily mean that the board agrees with that, and they might want to make a change, a reduction, an elimination, put something back in there. But it was at least a basis or a starting point for us to assemble this budget. The same thing with the possible cuts coming up. Those are some items that we thought of and put together some dollar figures associated with that and tried to explain what the impact then would be on the operations. Just because it's not contained in there doesn't mean that it isn't something we could do, and just because we've listed it there doesn't necessarily mean it's something that if the board does not think is appropriate needs to be cut. The list is longer than the $295,000, so it's definitely a menu type situation for consideration, all the items. Two of the things that it's important to note with the revenues, they include something that was brought to management and to staff last year, actually, and we began to investigate it and discussed it with the mayor and some other board members at our Administration and Finance Committee meeting, and decided to put in here a gasoline tax, a 2.5 cent per gallon gasoline tax, which would generate $427,500. So the revenues that we have for the general fund include that $427,500. If the board chose not to go that direction and did not want to impose that 2.5 cent tax, wanted to do something less or not do a gasoline tax at all, then we would obviously have to go back and re-examine our expenses once again, because we would require additional cuts in the difference on that amount. We'll talk about the gasoline tax a little bit more in depth when we get to the revenue section as well. In our budgeted expenses, we do have one adjustment here, which is consolidated dispatch. Last year during the budget process, the board gave us a direction to investigate and look into and pursue the idea of consolidating our telecommunication, our dispatch center with a consolidated dispatch center or another community. We have, during the past year, been looking at those options. We have, discussed them at board meetings and other committee meetings, and we are hopeful and intend to have that process completed by the end of this fiscal year if we have a viable solution that we can go with and that the board supports. What we have done is put in here a savings of approximately $100,000 that we would hopefully see by the end of this fiscal year if we were to proceed with that, knowing that May 1st it's not going to happen, but at some point in time during the year, we're hoping that we would start to realize some savings from that change in this fiscal year. That's obviously not the total savings we would get if we were to, to go a whole year, but we were trying to be conservative and saying we know it's going to be several months into it, and then the process takes time, and there's some changeover costs that we're considering as well. So we have built in there on these expenses that we would need to do that and to save that 100,000 this fiscal year as well. Any questions on that portion, those items? Looking at our overview on the PowerPoint presentation, we have here a 12-year history of where we are at on expenses and revenues. This is our what we call our operating funds, so our operating revenues and expenses, which include the general fund, convention and tourism fund, and IMRF FICA fund. What you can see is that this fiscal year, we do have revenues in those funds exceeding our expenses in those funds currently. So that is a good thing. The majority of that, however, is in the IMRF fund, where I'll explain this as we go through a little bit more, but we had our early retirement incentive that was passed in 2006, and there was a debt that came with that. And we did an internal loan from our proprietary fund, from our water fund, to pay that off in order to reduce our financing costs, as we can pay our financing charges to ourselves as opposed to a bank. Well, because of the personnel changes that we've made the past several years, we have reduced our IMRF and FICA expenses. So we have had excess funds in that fund in order to pay that loan off accelerated. So rather than going one more year on that, we're actually going to be paying it off by the end of this fiscal year, which is a year ahead of what we had anticipated. So there are two things that happened because we expected to have another year. We levied the taxes at the time thinking that we would still need additional funds for that, as well as the fact that IMRF, we talked about last year, they changed their funding. They had such losses with the market that we went from being approximately funded to underfunded, which meant we expected to see our employer rate, rise substantially. It did not. Part of that also has to do with the fact that we reduced our expenses for personnel as well. So we did not see a large increase like other municipalities, as well as other taxing agencies within the village boundaries saw. The Park District, I know, saw a large increase in their IMRF rate. We did not experience that because of some of the things that we've been doing in the past several years. So we were fortunate that the expenses that we have this year, we have done the property tax according to what we anticipated a possible rate increase being, and we didn't see that. So we will have excess funds this year from our property tax portion that's IMRF that we will have in here. It exceeds the expenses. So what we can do then is next year, as long as we don't see anything happen with the IMRF rate that we didn't anticipate, we would be able to then start to decrease our property tax rate for IMRF and FICA down, particularly IMRF, because we will have some reserve funds in there to offset that. So it is a good thing. So for this year, when we're looking at our revenues exceeding our expenses currently, the majority of that has to do with the fact we will have those excess funds in IMRF. So not necessarily able to use them in the general fund this year to help, but definitely a good position to be in next year. So when we do our property tax levy at the end of the year, we will be taking that into consideration and can do something. So what we've got in terms of cash reserves and our cash balances, these are also some operating funds as well as our capital projects fund and our emergency reserve. You can see that since 2000, our cash balances and our cash reserves have dropped from just over $6 million to a projected $1.6 million at the end of this fiscal year. We have, see from 2000 and from 2010 to 2011, we are seeing a drop, although we've seen some recovery in our cash balances on a monthly basis with how our cash flow is. This projects the payoff of that IMRF debt as well. So the money that was accumulating in there now to pay off the debt at the end of this fiscal year will be gone and into the water fund, which the cash reserves are not taken into consideration with here. So what we've gotten down to now is, okay, we're at 1.6 on our cash reserves, and that now doesn't have anything inflated there for paying off a liability that we have out there like it did last year. So 1.6 is where we see ourselves being at the end of the budgeted fiscal year here in 2011. So when we look at some of the other funds, back to our binder, we've got the Convention and Tourism Fund. That is the fund that we, prior years, had put our hotel motel taxes in as they were restricted prior to us changing to home rule status. Those funds, we've been spending down the fund balances for those prior accumulated hotel motel taxes. So what the intention was is that fund would eventually be depleted, all the excess reserves, and we would then have just the Westmont Center expenses in the Convention and Tourism Fund. So you'll see us using some of those, the expenses exceed the revenues because we're still spending down some of those reserves that we had, and then you'll see the Westmont Center expenses still in there. One of the nice things is that we had expected after the current fiscal year that we're in, fiscal year 2009, 2010, that we wouldn't have much left in there at all. Because of restricting expenses and being very conscientious, we're actually going to have a significant balance still in there of about $80,000, which is very good. So that gives us a couple more years. We still have to be conscious that, the money's not going to last forever, but due to the budget changes and reduction of expenses, we're seeing that last a little bit longer, which is a good thing. Some of the other funds that we'll be discussing then next week in our meetings would be the Vehicle Replacement Fund and our Capital Projects Funds, which are our two major capital project funds. We've got our Water Operating Fund, our proprietary fund, our Motor Fuel Tax, which is another capital project fund, IMRF Social Security, which I alluded to, and then a little bit on our Emergency Reserve Fund as well. Two things that I want to go to. We're going to go to the expense sheet next, which is a comparison of our expenses from the current fiscal year that we're in to the proposed fiscal year 2010-2011. And Trustee Klebanow had asked a question. She had looked at what was in last year's budget that was presented, and then this year, and although the bottom line for the expenses was the same, some of the departments were different. And the explanation for that is, and it's a great question, and we go through and we do explain it a little bit once we get into the meat of the document. When we look at expenses comparison year to year, it's only fair to compare apples to apples. And sometimes we reclassify an expense from one department to another. We did it several years ago where the departments used to pay for all their telephone expenses, and then we moved it all to IT, as well as dues and subscriptions for certain computer items. Well, when we move those expenses in a year, we make sure that we look back and the expenses that were budgeted in those prior departments get moved to the new department. So when you're looking and you see an increase, it isn't inflated. So they didn't go from not having that at all to, oh, we've got a 50% increase because something substantial got moved. So when we move expenses, you'll see the bottom line stays the same, but there might be some discrepancies in the actual divisions and departments when we move them around. One of the major ones this year that happened in is legislation. We moved a lot of the expenses from Convention and Tourism Fund to the Legislation Division in the General Fund, moving some of that out of the Convention and Tourism since we are depleting those revenues, the reserves. We've still got some in there, but we did move a majority of those. So in order to make it a fair comparison, last year's expenses got moved there as well to show the comparison. But the bottom line does stay the same. So if you do look back at past fiscal years and see a discrepancy, that's how it's accounted for. In this expense comparison, you can see in our general fund, as proposed, we have a 2.1% decrease. The $18,956.80 that we're proposing this year in expenses is down $402,710 from last year's expenses of $19,353,390. You can then go through and see all of the department and the division decreases that we have for each of the sections, and we go through all of those departments and divisions when we proceed with the PowerPoint in each of the departments. So we'll discuss what constitutes those changes, those decreases, and the percentage and the dollar amounts for all of those. The next section, the next sheet in the budget binder is our interfund transfer summary. Some things that we do are chargebacks to ourselves from one division or department to another in order to clearly illustrate what the operating costs are for a particular division or department. We sometimes have to charge, say, for gasoline for vehicles to run that particular department, or to support an internal fund or service like the IT department. We will charge back the department. Well, when we do that, if we don't account for those and take those out of revenue and expenses, it inflates both of those. So we look at the budgeted revenues and budgeted expenses listed here, and then we take out the interfund transfers in for the revenue, so you can see the actual revenue coming in. That's new money coming in. And then on the expenses, it's actual expenses going out to a vendor, not to ourselves. So when we transfer money internally, we don't consider ourselves a vendor. It's just an internal paper transfer. So you can see when we are looking at $30,679,125 in budgeted expenses for the current fiscal year, we have $975,485 of internal interfund transfers to bring our actual expenses down to $29,703,640. And that same amount is obviously taken off of revenues as well. Any questions so far? Doing okay? All right. The next sheet is the funds carried forward summary. It's important to understand, just like with our own personal finances, at the end of the fiscal year, you don't necessarily have no money. You don't start off fresh with $0. There's always a balance in the bank account. There's always money either in excess or hopefully not, a deficit from the prior fiscal year coming in. So when we look at what we have, we always look at what is our estimated cash balance for all the expenses that we're going to account for in the prior fiscal year, and all the revenue that gets attributed back to that fiscal year. If we had closed business that particular day, how much money would we have in the bank with no additional obligations and no additional money coming in? So when we do that, if we closed our doors on 4/30/2010, where would we be in terms of cash money? And what we have here is in our general fund, we estimate $20,000, which is a good thing right now. It doesn't seem like a lot, but that's a very good thing considering what this past fiscal year has been. And I'm going to go more into how we got there and why that's a good place to be. And we can smile when we say $20,000. In convention and tourism, we do estimate $100,000, which is, as I said, more than we had originally anticipated. So good hold on the expenses there for the staff. Our EBST at $4,800, which is one of our static internal service funds. Our vehicle replacement of $1.488 million. Our capital projects of $859,300. Our water operating of just over $2.5 million. Motor fuel tax of $1.625 million. IMRF and Social Security, $428,000, and our emergency reserve of $595,100. What I want to explain in why the $20,000 is actually good and why the emergency reserve is listed as $595,100 is because last year, at this time, we had reduced expenses after the budget workshops and all the work that was done by the board to get our expenses down with our revenue projections. We felt we couldn't cut anymore, and we decided to use $390,000, approved $390,000 maximum from our emergency reserve, which is our savings account, to subsidize the general fund. And it was under the direction that, we would obviously only do that up to that point if we needed to. Well, at this point, with what we project our revenues to be, that we would credit back to this fiscal year, as well as the accrued expenses that we have and the liabilities that we have out there, we not only expect to have $20,000 in excess, but we do not expect that we will have to transfer any of the $390,000, which is a very good thing. Once again, I can say those are projections, so it might be coming back to the board later with my tail between my legs saying, you know what, we missed something and we do need to transfer some, but we hope that if we do, it would not be to the extent of the entire amount, and that we'll be in good shape not having to have to touch that savings account. And that's also on top of the fact that we're going to talk about later on that our revenues, even though we are ultra conservative with our revenue projections, we weren't uber apparently enough, because our sales tax did not recover in the time that we had hoped that it would, to the extent that we had hoped it would this year. So we did this through really holding the line on expenses and still not having to go to the reserves, even though our revenues didn't hit our projections this year. So I probably went over that figure about 15 different ways because I couldn't believe my eyes when I did it. So, but we're cautiously optimistic, as the village manager says.
How close were we on the projections on the sales tax revenue?
Well, we're going to go over that when we look at the revenues and stuff, and I don't want to quote because I've got the figures in there, but I believe we're 6% down from where we had projected to be. Now, 6%, it's $400,000, which seems like a lot of money because it is a lot of money, but when you're looking at, in $7 million range for what our revenues are, that is at 6%, but that's still a lot of money. So each percent is significant.
Thank you.
So we expect that our estimated cash balance to begin the fiscal year will be about $7.6 million. If we were to receive to the penny all of the revenues and expenses that we have in the budget currently, as it stands, we would expect that at the end of this fiscal year on 4/30/2011, we would have $4,953,370, a decrease of over 2.6 million, almost 2.7 million, the majority of which would be in our capital projects funds, where the philosophy with the fund is if there's a possibility that we would be billed and completing with a project, then we budget for the entire amount to be there. So if we have a big road construction project going in the motor fuel tax fund, that is $900,000, and we've begun it, and there's a possibility it could be completed in this fiscal year, we budget for all of the expenses for that year. That may or may not happen. Sometimes the revenues don't come in the same year either. They could have come in a prior fiscal year, or it might be a situation where we are reimbursed at a later date for that. So there might be revenues that come in later, but we track those. So when we're looking at, seeing $2.6 million, it's not that we're budgeting $2.6 million below what we expect in our revenues, because as I mentioned before, we have cash reserves or funds carried forward coming in here. So, any questions on any of that so far? Been along here. I want to go to the expense comparison. The two sheets that we talked about earlier in this section listed where our expenses were and the percentages for each of the departments and divisions. Here is an overview on the PowerPoint that shows the last 6 years worth of, we've got 4 years of actual and then last year's budget and this year's budget. So you can see back to fiscal year 2005, 2006, what our actual expenses have been through 2008, 2009 fiscal year, and then last year's budget of $31,375,050, and then this year's budget as it's currently presented, excluding the interfund transfers, of $29,703,640, a 5.3% decrease. And this is the overall village expenses. Okay, if there's the next page in the budget binder is just a listing of the different expense or the different funds that we have and how they're set up. So now we get into the preliminary cuts that I discussed before. These are the ones that currently are contained in the budget document. This is not all of them. This is some major ones for discussion points. We have listed in the binder all of them that we had in there, and they equal $423,308, so $423,308 that we had taken out. And then we've got some listed here that were the big discussion points and what were done throughout a lot of the departments, like reducing professional services. Each department went through and looked at what they paid for professional services, what services we were contracting for, and made cuts where they could. The same thing with supplies. If we felt that we had some excess funds there or there were things we could go without, all across the board, the departments reduced those. We do have some that are listed for department specific, like the Public Works Department had an E85 tank conversion that's been eliminated. They had budgeted originally to put that in and to do that conversion this year. Felt due to the cost of that this was just not a year that they couldn't prudently put that in there. So this is the list with the action of whether it's eliminate or reduce, and then the dollar reduction amount, and then the impact on each of those by doing that. In there, are blue sections, highlighted ones. The Citizens Finance Planning Committee report that came out a couple months ago contained some suggestions after their review of the revenue streams and the expenses in their presentation. During the budget process, we looked at those and tried to implement those or suggest implementation or consider those for discussion points. So where we had gone with those recommendations are highlighted in blue. So in professional services, where there were some ideas, we either added or subtracted according to, not necessarily to the penny of what they had suggested, but at least on the premise or the topic of whatever it was. So those are all listed in blue on the preliminary cuts, and then as well for the items for consideration. Any questions, comments, additions, subtractions on any of the preliminary cuts that are included in there? Did any of the board members have any questions or want clarification on any of the items? No, we seem okay? Okay. Next is the pink section. The white were the items that are included in the budget. The pink sheets are what we called level 2. We ranked them level 1, level 2. Level 1 were the things that we took out already in the budget, were the white sheets. The level 2, the pink sheets, are the items that we've assembled for discussion and for consideration for the board to discuss and make recommendations on. So those are the items in the pink. Once again, there are blue highlighted for ones that were also contained in the Citizens Finance Planning Committee recommendations. So what we're looking at is a deficit of currently in the general fund. These are all general fund items. The rest of the funds are completely separate. So when we're looking at our projected net right now in the budget of a deficit of $295,655, the items that we have listed in here in total equal $605,290. So there's ample items listed here if the board chose to reduce that budget, close that gap with nothing but items for consideration here in the pink. Could do so by doing that. But as I said, that's all, these are just discussion points, just some possible items to be considered. Was there anything on here that the board wanted to start to discuss or had questions on?
The only thing I'd say is, going back to the white ones now, they had a chance to think about it. I'd like information out of Public Works, what their cost in outsourcing for changing of tires and balancing is versus what the cost of the equipment would be to do it in-house, please.
Okay.
Yeah, if you could give me at least a year and a half or 2 years' worth of research on that.
We certainly can, and we can present that at the next budget workshop then. We'll get you that information.
Lisa, going back, first paramedic contract, I know we had the gentleman here, there's some question of, and then it says here to be negotiated. So we're hoping to have a savings in that through negotiations, or is that something that's already done?
I believe the number that's in there is already done. I'm getting
Already done?
the affirmative nods
Wow.
from our fire chief
Thank you.
and deputy chief. So yes, we were working on that. The fire department's been working diligently on that, renegotiating that contract and talking with Kurtz, who's been very helpful and
Excellent.
very obliging. They've been wonderful to work with, understanding and very sympathetic to the current state of the village finances. And really supportive of trying to maintain our relationship in these hard economic times. So I know the staff at the fire department, the chief and the deputy chiefs, and Lynn and Craig have all worked hard to work on that. But that budget figure now that's in there is what they've agreed upon.
Now, so the public knows too, they've been able to do that, negotiate the contract. Services will maintain the level that they were?
There are no changes in services, no.
So
This was just them working with us to
that's
reduce
tremendous.
the costs as much as,
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Lisa, I think I've asked this question before, so forgive me, I just don't remember what the answer was. We do our payroll in-house, or we outsource it?
No, we do our payroll in-house. We have an automated time and attendance system, and then
So we cut the check here?
we cut the check. We do all of the processing here, and that's not the only thing that the person does. That's, there's multiple things, because she's also the pension pension coordinator, so for police pension.
Could we look at, if for no other reason, I think there'd be small savings, but maybe to free that person up to take on additional duties so that we can be a little leaner, a little meaner?
Well, we looked
Could
at
we-
outsourcing
Well,
that.
not necessarily outsourcing. What I was going to say is mandatory direct deposit and online pay stubs.
Okay.
So that there's no paper issued anywhere.
We already have mandatory direct deposit.
Okay.
And we actually worked on, last year, we purchased an employee service portal through our company, our MSI, our accounting software, and we've been working to get that so that we
We will
wouldn't-
have online stubs?
Yes, yes.
Mandatory?
Yes.
Oh,
Well, yeah, we
wonderful.
would no longer be issuing the
Wonderful.
actual paper direct deposit stubs. People would be able to go on, which is nice because there's a history there as
Oh,
well.
it's great. I mean-
So a lot more information available to them. And we've been working on, there's some kinks, there aren't a lot of people who've been using that product, so we've been working out the kinks, but
Excellent.
we did purchase that software or that module last year and are working toward that, yeah.
Great. Do we have a timeline when we think we might be able to launch it?
Yeah, I don't know.
And would it apply to-
Spencer's laughing because he works on the technical part of
And
it.
would it be everybody? It would be police?
Yes, everybody.
It would be everybody?
Yes,
Yeah,
full and part-time.
Great.
The major issue is that we continue to have the same problem with it. Their software that they use to convert it to be usable online keeps having problems, and Fred and IT has to keep rebooting it, refixing it, working with MSI every payday. So as soon as the technical issues can be resolved with the vendor, then we will let everybody know about it and move forward with
Do
it.
we have any teeth with MSI where we can get?
I believe
where
our
we can
IT
play a little
manager would like
hardball
to
with
chime
them
in
and
on
say,
this.
Fred and I just talked about this today because payroll was this week. So we believe by next week, we'll be able to push the information out to the employees as a whole. So
Great.
we're now, the problem is with the way the server handles it, we've put in a test environment so we could test without doing it live, which was our big problem. We were having problems running the payroll live. So now we can process the checks on a regular biweekly basis or bi-monthly basis and do the employee portal and do our testing on the side so we don't interrupt the live process. So we're ready to go probably to the employees next week. So.
Good, I didn't even know that timeline.
wonderful.
for
Thank
asking,
you.
Sue.
Yeah, it was a discussion I just had with Fred today, so I didn't have time to talk to Lisa about it yet.
Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn, for answering that. So yeah, we are working on trying to reduce that, make it less manual process and less labor intensive. We have saved a lot of time with getting into the time and attendance system, and we no longer are manually entering in the hours like we used to in our system. It's all done electronically now, so that has freed up a lot of time, and then that full-time person is working on other projects, whether it be, her own things that she has to do for police pension or helping some of the rest of us in the department out as we've reduced our part-time person's hours as well.
Great.
So, we are working on that particular subject.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Can you also give us the numbers on the accreditation for the fire department?
On the cost for the accreditation of the fire department, do you know offhand, Frank, the agency costs for accreditation?
That was pretty minimal, it's not 5,000.
Compared to like,
For the benefit of the audience.
please.
That cost is around 5,000 for us to do the accreditation. And part of that is reimbursed through IRMA.
Okay.
And we
that's
don't know that exact amount that we're trying to get this year.
And that's annually,
Yes.
5,000 annually?
Or that's 5,000 just for when they come out for the on-site interview with us.
Okay.
And that's once every 5 years.
Okay. So it's not 5,000 every year?
No.
Okay.
So what's the cost every year then? That was the
Approximately
question.
2 to 3,000.
Okay.
Okay, every year.
That was my question, the cost per year, not every 3 years or 5 years,
So,
per year.
Okay.
so every year we're at 2 to 3, and then we have to pay the 5 when they reoccur, on top of the 2 to 3?
Yes, but that is also reimbursed, as I said before, through IRMA. Depending upon this year, what percentage of that is, we don't have information on that.
Okay.
Anything else?
We're
Were there any other items
Did ever-
on either of the lists now, particularly the ones that are contained in the budget that,
On the white pages, I just wanted to say, I just noticed that under the police, the National Safety Council / Alive at 25, are we eliminating the program or just the subscriptions, Alive at 25?
Looks like eliminate.
Answer your question would be the entire
Does
program, our
eliminate.
subscription and the entire program. We would continue it for the rest of the school year, but starting in September, we would not continue it. There is a problem with trying to get financing for it, funding. They were going to have to go out and try to solicit and get raise funds. At this point, we just don't have the money to pay for it.
So the high school kids won't be taking it to get parking?
That was what Deputy Chief Gunther could probably explain it better than I can, but it's my understanding that that was one of the reasons we did this, was to get the kids, to get a buy-in, to get them going, to get the program started. You had to, in order to get your parking pass at the high school, you had to have provided a certificate of completion for the program. However, we feel that, just looking at our dollars and cents, and it's a program we could probably take a pass on this year, and if we have to, start up again in the future.
Chief, was there a cost to the students to have this program, or do we?
My advisor is shaking his head no. Deputy Chief Gunther is one of the coordinators, Jim, if you want to come up and maybe.
My question then would be, how many students do you think went through the program, and is that something that we could present to the district and say, okay, charge the students, X amount of hours? If you had 100 students go through the program, a few dollars by each student would help pay for it.
We had approximately 150 students go through the program, my last recollection. We didn't want to burden the students or the parents with additional fees because they were already paying for the parking pass. And I believe the school district increased the cost of the parking pass.
Okay.
So we didn't want to push more costs on to, in a bad economic time.
If I'm reading this right, it's $400.
There's several fees associated with the program, from rental or leasing of the DVDs that we use, the purchase of the materials, the certificates, the training manuals. The village agreed at the time to absorb the cost of the overtime associated with paying myself and Sergeant Schlicker to put the program on. So those were kind of hidden fees that.
So this is sort of what we can quantify, then there's other things
Right,
that just kind of
yeah.
snowballed into it.
And then we also feed the kids, either breakfast if we did it on a Saturday, or
Okay.
provide pizzas on a weeknight if we did it in the afternoon.
And for the first year, we did have a sponsor. There was a local insurance
This-
agent.
yeah.
Gave us this was a state
I mean,
firm.
it's such a,
Yeah.
it's
She
such
gave
a
us a
good,
donation to get the program up and started, but since then, we've lost that funding and our costs are increasing.
I mean, it's such a good program, and I know that all of our taxing bodies are struggling, but is this something that perhaps 201 could share with us?
how much was the funding from the insurance agency?
I don't remember the exact dollar amount.
I've been watching the meetings with District 201. I know they're in the same financial strains.
I know they're struggling just as we are, but
But as Deputy Chief Gunther said, you also have to look into personnel costs in any of the programs. You have to look at that too, and unfortunately for the programs, we have only 2 instructors, and it would be done on their overtime costs.
painful,
Thank you.
painful.
Any other questions as far on white sheets, pink sheets?
So one of the items for consideration on here, and again, I don't know, the Christmas wreaths and decorations. I know we cut back last year.
Are those on the, for
They're on-
consideration, or?
Those are the items for consideration.
Consideration.
Dash one there.
Yeah.
I know we cut back last year.
We did.
I don't remember, was it every other poll we did or something like that? Is that right?
We did. Yes, and what's in here for the consideration is the word eliminate, which means that is what we had in the budget this current fiscal year. That would be completely eliminating the program. So from every other poll to no polls.
And I'm missing it in here. Where's it in here? On the-
It's on the pink sheets?
Pink
Because
sheet,
it's not contained in the
I know,
actual document
I
as
was trying
it
to
is.
find it, and I didn't know.
That was definitely one where, that was
There-
a
okay,
suggestion from the Citizens Finance
That's what I
Planning Committee
thought.
to take a look at it again.
Yeah.
But this is actual elimination. Now, the determination could be made that you want to do it in certain spots and buy, 10 poles worth of stuff. If we were to eliminate the entire thing, it would be a $6,000 savings for the wreaths, say. You could do that. You could do half, you could decide something different. But this was at least to quantify the amount to completely eliminate that entirely.
I'm wondering, and I know we're only in discussions, Trustee Fleming, I think, or Trustee Scott, as one of you two brought that up, about the Park District bringing some of their decorations
Actually,
downtown.
that's already underway.
So-
Yeah, we've talked to Ron Gunther in detail on that.
So
And
could
that's
we,
something that he's considering, because with the way the funding's going anyway, the holidays events are going to be scaled considerably back based on the funding that's available. So part of it was, they're not going to hire the company Power Up to run everything anymore. So some of those items he'd be willing to bring into the downtown area. As far as the Christmas tree walk, you might have some
He
in
talked
one
about that at
spot.
length at our joint meeting.
Right, and so, I mean, it's just a question, I think it'd be a case that we would want to probably get together with him, as well as some of the downtown businesses in the area, to maybe supply a little bit of power for a short month's time to run some of these things.
well, that's what I'm thinking, if they have decorations downtown, if we eliminate the wreaths, but we're bringing,
Right.
the Park District is bringing things downtown, then maybe we can eliminate the wreaths completely, at least for this year.
Replace them with.
But you're right, it would be talking to the Park District, talk to the businesses, but that might be a possibility if all that's in the works already.
I see also they've got in here under these considerations, the senior council. I personally don't want to see it completely eliminated,
I don't either.
because I know that they've taken some major hits.
Yeah.
I know that Downers Grove has completely wiped it out. They're not involved with it anymore.
This reflects a significant reduction from what
Okay.
they've requested too. They've
Right.
requested like, I want to say $37,000 to $38,000 from us this year. And last year, we likewise reduced the amount that we gave to them.
I agree, I don't want to see it gone
No.
at all. Whatever we-
And I hate to bring this up too, but the chamber funding of 58,000, are we locked into that number?
It's the external funding.
The external funding, are we locked into that number?
We're not locked into anything until you approve the budget.
Okay.
I mean, that's what they've requested. You saw their work plan that they proposed and the different elements. The recommendation that came from the Citizens Finance Committee was to reduce it, I think, by about $6,000 or $8,000.
It was 8,000, yes.
But I think if you're going to reduce it, you would probably look at the different elements of the work plan and suggest that they don't do something as part of that, rather than just a percentage cut.
Right.
I think it's something we need to start to look at,
Yeah.
and rolling back on those numbers and eventually get it to a point where, like our Westmont special events, they're self-sufficient. I love the work that Larry Forsberg and the Chamber does, but I think it's time that we start scaling those numbers back and let them be self-sufficient. Because I honestly, I'll support Senior Citizens Council more than I'll support the Chamber in funding. I fully believe that they need it more. That's the way I look at it. As far as the DuPage Convention Bureau goes, I know we get a lot for that, but I think they might have to do with a little bit less also, and I think we need to talk about that funding also.
We didn't put that on the list, did we?
It's not on there.
Not on.
We
The
wrote
reason it's
pretty
not on there
adamant.
was based upon the report we got. I interpreted the reaction from the board to mean that, that the funding should stay in place, but we can
Yeah, I mean, that's what we all
certainly make any
collectively
changes.
said, but certainly everything has to be considered.
I was always against the funding that much funding for the chamber.
Yeah, I agree with the chamber, but I think the Visitors Bureau, if our businesses don't get promotions, we stand to lose businesses.
Okay.
And truly is, I mean, the chamber does a lot for the business as well, so it's really kind of a catch-22. I would hate to see our chamber dissolve, and I think they would be at risk if we took it all away.
But every town has a chamber, and no
No, I'm
town
talking
pays
about
like
ours.
we are.
I think ours would be at
But
significant
you always
risk.
compare us to other towns, and there is not one town around here that pays even 30,000. I think only Lyle did, and that was before the economic problems. I'd like to see if they're even funding 30.
I believe that to be true, but I would go head-to-head. I believe we have a much better and well-developed chamber than any surrounding town. I mean, even when we have the multi-chamber functions, you see it. I have a friend that works for an unnamed chamber, and she's always comparing her chamber to our chamber and how vital and good we are by comparison. And I think that's largely due to the relationship we have with them.
Maybe the chambers have to start thinking about combining too, though.
Just like we've talked about consolidation with some of our services.
I mean, our
within the
chamber
village.
is great and all that,
Yeah.
but it's not that big.
No,
There's other towns that are around
146
here.
members, something like that.
300 members?
It's less than that.
Okay, and then, but you've got other towns that are around here that probably have that or less. Downers has got over 6, not trying to compare it with Downers, but maybe we could combine with somebody else. Maybe it's Darien or somebody else to,
Yeah, my only recommendation would be if we decided to cut funding to the chamber, that we find a way to leave it in this year and give them at least a year's notice to prepare. I don't believe anything of that volume and magnitude we should pull the rug out from underneath them. We're all struggling, and, while I certainly agree that it has to be looked at, I would just hope that if it comes to that, we give them some warning so that they can prepare.
gives them an opportunity to continue at that point.
Kind of like the state's doing us. Go figure.
Yeah, they've given us a lot of warning.
Yeah, that's my point.
Yeah.
We'll have better manners.
Trustee Sand, I agree with giving them the warning, but I'm wondering if we, 8,000, if we should be looking at, that was the recommendation from
The recommendation, certainly.
And then
Oh, yeah.
next year, maybe more.
And then next year, a little bit more
Yeah.
and things like
Fund
that.
them
At least
down.
that's what the committee recommended.
I
think
mean,
we-
that's
Yeah.
exactly what we did with the Westmont special events.
Yeah.
It went
Well, actually, they
down,
came to us.
Down. I
Came
understand
to
that.
us and
But
said, we
our
don't.
amount of contribution went down over a period of years.
Well, they came to us, but after we found out how much was in their account.
Right, after we called it.
Audited the
It's
books.
just going to take one bad year, though, and we're going to be back in the same
Well-
situation. But
Then it is what it is. There's nothing we can do about that.
I think, just going through the budget, comparing last year to this year, I think we still have way too much in here in terms of conferences and things like that. I know I hate to be the bad guy, but we do have some conference stuff in there, and, times are bad. We can keep all the publications. We have to read about this training, not necessarily go to it for a year. I don't know how much value there really is in things like the Illinois Municipal League. I don't think any of us stayed overnight last year. I know we had it in the budget, but I don't think any of us stayed. I think we all paid ourselves. And we need to keep doing that. I'd like to see it just stripped out completely. I don't know. Just 1 year, maybe 2 years. It's a lot of money. It's like,
I think, luncheons and
$61,000.
and
counted in
golf outings and stuff like that can
conferences.
go, there's a lot of conferences that we need to keep in. I mean, like Steve has to keep his engineering accreditation, and there's a lot of things that Ron goes to because he brings back valuable information so we don't have to reinvent the wheel. I think it's actually, the way that Lisa's broken it out, it's so itemized that it really gives us the opportunity to see each one.
Right. And costs associated
Kind
with
of pick
that.
and choose, because if it just said conferences,
Or send one person, maybe.
yeah.
And one person comes back, and it's kind of like the train the trainer. I don't know.
I think we've made a number of those kind of cuts already.
Yeah.
Yeah, you will see a lot of those, the reduction on the white sheets that are already in there. Here's a good example on page 2 of the white sheets in legislation administration and conferences and training. There was the elimination already of 6 chamber luncheons for $300. The DuPage mayors and managers meetings, 5 of them reduced it, $150. So there was a lot of that, getting rid of the Mays Lake golf outing and the 100 Club.
But we did that last year, too.
We reduced it, and now it's completely eliminating.
Oh, I didn't think we paid anything for Mays Lake last year.
Yeah, we had some in the budget still for that. Whether or not anybody went, I'm not sure, but we still had money in there, and now we're eliminating the last $180 for the golf outing that we had in there, and that's already out of this. So we, even eliminated $350 for the State of the Village luncheon, so for paying for staff to go to the State of the Village luncheon for the chamber. So you'll see throughout here, the reduction in the clerk's department, you can see 560, 750, 250, 300 for reducing. And a lot of that is exactly what you said, just so you know, going from like 2 people to 1 person.
I know, but my concern is, what is the value? Is it quantifiable? What do you get that you can't pick up in, the magazine subscriptions or the websites or self-based training? These are bad times. I just don't think we should be spending thousands of dollars sending people on overnight trips. I mean,
We only pay the registration, we don't pay, right? Didn't we change?
For out of state, we don't pay, we don't pay for
pay.
anything except for registration to a maximum of, well, no, we budget 500, but.
Most of them aren't overnight anyway, they're just day training. Except for certain things like in police and fire, which are necessary.
On the dues and subscriptions for Rotary, that's for Ron Searle. It's not for me. The village has never paid for my involvement in Rotary in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
On the DuPage mayors and managers, I don't know if there's any way to eliminate some of that, but you have Ron and Fred and other staff members that are in constant contact with mayors and managers, and the same thing with the IML.
Right.
When they have legal questions,
and I
those
think
are the experts.
those are the kinds of things that are important, but I don't think it's right to be paying for board members to go to that stuff. I mean, we get a salary. We are paid, and we should be using that money on our own to attend those types of functions. It's different with a staff member. I honestly believe, yes, Fred and Ron should be going, but we, the elected officials, should be paying our own way. These are tough times.
I paid mine.
Well, I know, we did pay our own way, but there's still stuff in there, even for this year, that needs to be taken out.
For IML to just go down to Chicago.
That's crazy, you can get on the train.
Right. We should be paying our own.
Last few years. And I just want to interject that has for clerk in here, but it isn't for me.
Right.
I have paid my own way
No, it's the
for
clerk's
years.
department. Yes, it's the clerk's department.
What I'd like to do is, Lisa, since the white pages are incorporated into the budget, correct? Right. Is rather than shotgun approach, is that we just start through every department. And because all of these, like the things for board members or clerks, whatever, are in legislative.
Yeah.
And all that, so that we can take a look at each department. Because I know going through here, since we got this, there's some things where there's questions, it'll say minus these reductions, but it doesn't have a number.
Okay.
It just gives us a total. So I'm curious to some of it because,
Okay.
that
So,
type of thing.
does it seem to make more sense and would be easier for the board if we started to go through each of the departments and then kind of discuss these and go back and forth to those? A lot of the reductions, the ones that are already included, so the white sheets, when you go through, like Ellen has said, you'll see where it has the line and there's a $0.
Yeah, or it's
And you're
blank.
right, it doesn't show what the old amount used to be, but you can see last year there was something and now there's nothing. And if there was a limit or a reduction, you wouldn't necessarily know. Sometimes we put like reduced by 1. Other times we just have a parentheses, it might have been 3 there and now you'll see a 1, but you might not know that it was 3 last year. So we can talk about those as we go through each of the departments if that would be easier, and then kind of flip back to some things. particularly with the pink items that are still in there, you're going to see those listed there. So when we're looking through the actual detail, when we get to the dues and subscriptions and legislation and you see the DuPage Convention and Visitors Bureau, or you see something else, then you can discuss it at that point in time, if that makes sense. Okay. Well, if that's the way we're going to proceed, then I'm going to flip to the next section, which is personnel, or the next, still in section 1 of the binder, but behind the next red sheet. So we should have something that starts with proposed general wage adjustment. What we do here, since we usually don't talk about any major personnel changes until after we've gone through the non-personnel related expense items, what we've done is outline here what the philosophy is and what has been used as the standard for personnel-based decisions for the dollar amounts that are included in the budget already. And the ones that we usually talk about are health insurance and a general wage adjustment, and then furlough time these past 2 years, and then economy time. So what we've done is, first of all, we have maintained, and I'm going back to the PowerPoint presentation now, we have maintained the same 8 full-time vacancies that we had budgeted last fiscal year. There has not been a movement to replace any of those 8 vacancies that were not included in the budget last year. That was one administrative assistant in Public Works, 4 sworn police officers, and 3 telecommunicators. Those positions have not been reinstated in this current budget format. We are also maintaining the part-time vacancies that we have in the current fiscal year, which are a mechanics helper in Public Works Fleet, 2 maintenance workers in Public Works Streets, 6 seasonal Public Works Streets employees, and 2 seasonal Public Works Water employees. So those positions have all stayed out of the budget. What we have done in terms of a general wage adjustment, again, for the non-union employees, we have a 0, the same as we did in the current fiscal year. Our union represented telecommunicators are also at a 0. They were kind of going along with us. Last year, they had kind of agreed to like a Me Too clause, what we call that. So if the non-union people are getting a 0, then they've agreed to go along with that and take that same adjustment. So they're in here as a 0. The union represented sworn police personnel officers in that union, that we currently have them in as a 0. However, their contract negotiation, their current collective bargaining agreement expires at the end of this fiscal year, so 4/30 of 2010. So we do not have a contract in place currently that has a general wage adjustment built into it. So since we're in the midst of negotiations on that, we have put a 0 in there to keep it the same as the others. If that then were to be negotiated as an increase, then we would have expenses that would have to be added in here.
Can we get the tentative numbers in 0.5%?
In 0.5%? Yeah, because what's 1%, Spencer?
I am not sure.
Okay, I know we had that, and I will get 0.5% increments, Ellen, for you.
Just so that we know if there's a stalemate, what kind of numbers we're talking about.
And I was actually thinking last night, like, well, what should I be prepared for? And that was one of the questions, and you would think that I would have had that ready for you.
Just in 0.5% increments as
Start at
painful,
0.
up to
Yeah.
0 to
2.
No.
0 to 1.
0 to 1.
0 to -1?
3.
0 to 3% in 0.5% increments.
Not that I'm even going to look at the other ones, but just so we know, if people get greedy, we at least know how greedy.
No
Right.
problem. And we will get that information
So
for
we
you.
know what impact it would have.
Yes, because that is important to understand the impact of that. So any 0.5%, if, we've got the figure for that, then you know when it comes in
'Cause,
exactly what we need to
We
do.
need to know what we can say the budget will absolutely not bear,
Yes.
without saying it, without having a hard number.
I don't think it'll handle 0.5%.
I understand that, I just want to.
Spencer's going to come up with a figure right now.
I
'cause
trust it will get.
He's going right in there and he's going to get his fingers working, I know it.
A lot with the,
He's handy. Okay. We currently have included the same furlough time for our non-union employees that we have this current fiscal year, which is 1 hour per week, so down to a 39-hour. We did not increase that at all, and we didn't go back to 40 hours, and we also didn't increase the amount of furlough time. So it's in here, what we've got is the current status quo with 39 hours. Each furlough hour per week that we do saves approximately $100,000 annually. So we had that question ready for you.
That's a lot of money.
So each hour is equivalent to, currently at what we have for the full-time and the part-time staff is $100,000 a year. On our proposed economy time, if you remember last year, as a kind of a concession and a way of showing the appreciation for the sacrifices that the non-union staff gave, and even the telecommunicators, or not the telecommunicators, I'm sorry, the police sergeants who ended up with 0% increases because they're outside of the collective bargaining agreement and in the non-union. The board had approved what we call economy time, which was an extra 24 hours for the non-union and then 12 hours for the police sergeants, to be able to use that as additional time off, almost as like personal time. It was a thank you for the sacrifices that you were making. Although everyone was still appreciative to have a job, it was nice for the board to kind of show that, we appreciate you being involved with this with us and hanging in there. And we have that still in here. There's no negative impact on the budget with that. It's merely time off, some lost productivity, but there's no financial impact on that. So considering we did that last year and we were doing the same thing, we have left, that in there, essentially, that philosophy. With our health insurance.
Then how do you keep track?
We do that the same way that we do our other paid time off. It's a different classification. It's actually called economy time because it went from fiscal year to fiscal year. So each employee at the beginning of the fiscal year was awarded the hours that they were deserving of, and then we have that as a classification of paid time off. So they follow the same process that we do for when we have to take a vacation day or a personal day. We have to submit a request for time off. We have to get that approved. And we kept track of them just like we did our other paid time off.
Okay, thank you.
And the staff was aware of the fact that that was something that could change each fiscal year. It's not in the personnel policy manual in terms of this is an ongoing benefit. It was with the understanding that this is for this fiscal year, you have to use it in this fiscal year, you lose it, and it's tied to the furlough time and the 0% general wage adjustment. And at any point in time, the board could decide that they wanted to discontinue that program. So there's no guarantees on any of that. With our health insurance, our renewal year, our plan year starts July 1st. So we're currently speaking with representatives from IPBC, our insurance cooperative, about what our rates are, but our most recent estimates with the preliminary discussions that we have in the budget, we have a 0% increase for our HMO, for our PPO, and a 13.5% increase for our HMO premiums. So that is currently built into the budget.
Maybe we should, I don't know if we can. I know there was a time when you were required by law to offer an HMO, but, maybe we need to start considering not offering HMO, period.
No,
Just offer
We talked about that at
PPO.
Admin and Finance, and
I know.
yeah, you don't have to offer an HMO.
Well, I know there was a time when you had to, but not anymore.
What was interesting is, until this year, the HMO premiums had actually increased less than the PPO premiums, and now it's flip-flopped. So it was more cost-effective before, to offer we weren't seeing those large increases on the HMO side. We were seeing them on the PPO, and now we've got them on the HMO side, so it's kind of hard to predict. So, no, we are not required to offer any program.
Could that be, we were trying to have some incentives for people to jump to the HMO. So do we have a lot of people now in HMO that is causing that to happen, or we don't know why it's?
Some of it is experience. Others would be the actual provider.
There are more people that have migrated.
Yeah.
That's part of it.
That's
but
part of it.
But that's not all
It's
of it.
also experience-driven.
Another piece of it is that IPBC was telling us that they're having difficulty negotiating better contracts for HMOs now than they are for PPOs. A lot of the hospitals are now saying, why should we pay you anything differently with an HMO as opposed to a PPO?
When the service is
Why
the
don't we
same.
pay you the same amount? And so the costs for HMOs across the country are going up because of that change in philosophy. It was sort of assumed that people would be more healthy with HMOs and you wouldn't have to pay as much. But hospitals are now saying, well, it's the same service, we're going to charge you the same amount. So the cost is going up. Even though we're having the higher cost percentage increase, at this point HMO is still cheaper than PPO. So if we have everybody move over to PPO right now, we would see an increase. But people that are on HMO have a higher percentage increase each year. So it's sort of the trade-off. Do you want a higher cost, or do you want to know that your cost is going to be relatively stable?
Right. Yeah. And you can't predict, this year, like we said, the HMO is still is more cost-effective for us as an employer. But, if the rates continue to go up like this, then that's going to flip-flop too. You just don't know. It's the insurance industry, and if anyone could predict that, let me know.
We are looking at some further moderate plan design changes to try to avoid costs for next year as well. Those discussions as we get closer to renewal.
The other item that we have both in the book and on the slide tells you what the employee insurance contributions are for each of the three employee groups and the two plans. So for the non-union employees, for the HMO, they pay 7%, and for the PPO, they pay 8%. The union represented police officers, although we are still in negotiations, this is based on their current contract. It's 8% for the HMO and 10% for the PPO, and then the telecommunicators are at 9% for HMO and 11% for the PPO.
Now, are those the cap numbers for the police
Yes.
officers? Okay.
Yeah, those are the caps.
That's the most they can pay.
For the term of the contract.
Yes.
Termed on for this contract.
Yeah.
Okay.
Through 2 weeks.
Just so
Another 2 weeks.
2 more weeks.
Just so you're aware, Alan, the base estimate, just looking at the budget, looks like it's about $15,000 for every 0.5% increase. We can get better figures for you next time, but it's roughly $15,000 for 0.5%, which would be about $30,000 for 1%.
And I was going to say off the top of my head, I thought that when we originally did it, it was about $35,000 or $40,000 per 1%, so that would be consistent with it. So, but we can go through for sure. And
Yeah.
So.
Well, it just tells me that what it would look like if they kept in their current vein of 4%.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you have a grape stuck in your throat?
Yes.
All right. Some other things we had on personnel, just in this section, we added in our organizational chart just because it's pretty and I thought it was a nice addition there. Something new to look at. We have our full-time and part-time personnel equivalents. And what I want to explain on this is the second page in here, which starts out, it says full-time personnel, FY 2007 through 2010, and then it says Public Works Street Division. So it's on the right-hand side there. It's the half page where it says the total full-time employees. The first column there, the 117, was our actual full-time employees during the fiscal year 2008-2009. So we were at 117. Our budget for the current fiscal year that we're in was 114. So we had reduced our full-time staff from actual of 117 to a budgeted 114. The next 112 that's listed is what we currently have in the budget. That's due to the two additional vacancies, the resignation and the retirement in the police department. What we currently have in the budget is what we, in this budget that's currently in front of you, is the same exact budget numbers for personnel as we had before, the 114. So there's discussion and some confusion when people say, we had two more vacancies. How can you hire police officers when we have these vacancies and the hiring freeze? The 114 are the same 114 that were approved in the current fiscal year's budget. They're the same ones. It's not adding to more positions to the police department. It's the same positions. We're just down those two. So that's where you see 114 down to 112, up to 114. It's just that we're currently, at this point in time, only at 112 of the 114 that have been approved in the current budget. And then we have our full-time, which stays approximately, 200, 210. That's difficult to do because there's a lot of part-time positions with our paid-on-call firefighters, so there's some fluctuation there. We consider that they keep about a static amount there, so hard to do them all. But this explains also the vacancies that I listed in the prior slide. Those are the same ones that we have.
Lisa, I just have a quick question. On our fleet division with the mechanic and the mechanics helper, they work on the public works vehicles. Do they work at all on the police vehicles?
They work on all
Fire-
vehicles, our entire fleet, including fire. And now we have we have saved a lot of money, and you can see the nodding heads from the fire department there. We talk about this a lot. A combination of instituting the vehicle replacement program 3 years ago, as well as getting somebody in the fleet division that can work on fire equipment, has saved us substantial amounts of money in outsourcing for repairs on our larger fire equipment.
Because I saw police at the, I believe municipal garage was 150,000?
That's gas. That's just for gasoline. That's their gas charge.
We're going to prisms. I'll clue you in.
Prisons, yeah. When you see those municipal garage, the majority of that is gas charges back to the fleet department. 'Cause we don't do the-
Prism.
Do we have
We're
the
going to
figures
prison
for the
'cause you're
mechanics repairing
taking
the car?
What do you mean, the
Upkeep?
do we have the amount of time that they do?
Yeah.
They fill out sheets in the garage that keep track of, and then they also have a database that keeps track of which vehicles are in, how often they're in.
The question is-
We ask for a report going back several years prior to the vehicle replacement program coming forward as to what the cost was to maintain the older fleet
Okay.
versus what it looks like now coming
Gotcha.
forward, replacing vehicles on a timely fashion.
Yeah, we do not have that. That will be, that information will be available at our next meeting when we talk about the vehicle replacement program.
The good news, that number should be significantly reduced because we've updated so much of the fleet.
Yes.
But
So-
there are some questions
Oh, sure.
by people, all this new equipment and all this other stuff or whatever, but you have to show the fact of what your cost used to be in maintaining older equipment, plus also how you went about acquiring that equipment back then. So, but we'll talk about that when we get to that.
We will have that data for you when we get to the vehicle replacement program.
Okay.
So we do, so to answer your question, Ellen, yes.
All right, sorry for the divergence.
It's okay. Sure we'll digress again. All right. Any other questions on personnel? Not, we're into section 2, which is revenue. We like revenue.
Lots of that.
Yes, I like lots of revenue.
Except that it goes down.
Oh, yeah, well, we don't like the trend, but we like it as a, yes, we like revenue. Okay. An overview on a couple of items on the PowerPoint presentation. Our overall budgeted revenues for fiscal year 2010, 2011 are $27,021,810. That excludes the interfund transfers. That is a 7.6% decrease from the current fiscal year's budget of $29,249,465. It does, even with that decrease, it includes 3 major increases in revenue. Number one, the ambulance fees of $180,000. Those are included. The increases in the ambulance fees are included in here on that projected revenue. Number 2 would be the gasoline tax that we talked about that has not been approved but was merely suggested on the summary of $427,500, which is based on a 2.5 cent per gallon municipal tax for that. And the third is the police pension property tax increase of $700,000, which I will be explaining when we get to the property tax portion of that in detail. So I'm going to ask that you refrain from questions on that one until we get to the property tax section, because hopefully I'll have covered all the questions before you have an opportunity to ask them. A couple of things in the binder. There is a breakdown of our village-wide revenue sources, which shows, for example, our sales and use tax of $7.45 million is about 28% of our overall, not just the general fund, but our overall village revenues. So you can see property taxes at 20%, utility taxes at 10%, water sales of $3.8 million at 14%. And so it explains each of those revenue sources and what the major revenue sources and what percentage, which is nice because sometimes there's misconceptions about how much property tax, how dependent we are on property tax or how dependent we are on each of these. And it's also important to understand when we see a large decrease in something like our sales tax, when you're looking at 28% of our revenue and you see a 6% decrease, well, then you start to put those numbers together and you go, that's pretty significant. So when we see something like that, it's important to understand 6% of a small number isn't as significant as when you're looking at 6% of our major or one of our top 3 revenue sources. I know I discussed it at one of the Administration and Finance Committee meetings about the fact that we're seeing some declines in our telecommunications tax. We're not really sure what's going on with that. Well, our telecommunications tax is 10% of our overall revenue. So when we see a decline in that, that's still a major revenue source for us. So we have to look at that.
Lisa, looking at this revenue chart, we're looking at in 06, we're at almost 29 million, 31 million, 29 million, and we're down to 27 million.
Yes.
And that includes that you mentioned.
Yes.
Why the big drop? Was that the sales tax?
The majority of that is the sales tax, yes.
Okay.
There are a couple other items. We've got
I mean, I know we're trying to be conservative, which we appreciate. At least I do.
hotel motel tax is down, utility tax is down a little bit as well. So, but the majority is.
Construction-related items are
Well,
down.
and,
Yes.
So just the overall economy being down.
Correct.
well, and at some point, the assessor's going to catch up with
He
the
did.
decline in, did that already happen?
He did, yeah. When we get to property taxes.
Oh,
we'll
okay.
explain
So I was
that.
going to say, that's
That's also in there too,
it's
then.
going to be a big ding,
Hold your
you know.
questions.
She did. Yeah.
Maybe I read ahead, I don't know.
Are all parking tickets, speeding tickets, code enforcement fines, and
Red light
red
camera?
light camera revenue, we need to know where it's accounted for?
Yep.
Is that in miscellaneous?
No, that's under court fines or local ordinances. It depends on which type it is.
Where is that in the non-exploding pie chart?
In the non-excluding pie chart, yes, that would be in miscellaneous. You are correct.
Okay, thank you, because someone might ask, just a premonition I
check.
have.
Yes, yeah, just a premonition you have, yes, that is correct. That would be in miscellaneous because we don't, court fines and things are, we don't break them out that specifically in such a big non-exploding pie chart.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, state income tax, we'll talk about what we're seeing with that. This budget also, which I can't believe it's taken me this long to get to it, and Ron's probably going, when is she going to talk about this? Is the state of the state, as we've talked about. This budget currently does not include any decreases in our local share of state revenue, so the LGDF.
This is where we put on our black armbands.
If the state...
Do we have black armbands we put on now for the rest of the?
If the state were to decide, in its infinite wisdom, that we have not shared in the pain enough, that we need to bear some more of it and slash some major revenue source of ours, probably income tax, possibly motor fuel, they could touch sales tax. There's no limit to what, how catastrophic it could be. I mean, it could be from, 600,000 on a low side to $6 million. I mean, we have no idea what, considering where they're at right now, what they're capable of and what they're thinking. This doesn't include any of that.
It's just that they don't think.
Yeah.
Candles, turn the lights on. Candles.
Yes, yes, that is as well, right, and we'll talk about that when we get to those, the revenue sources, but yes. So this just includes, what our projections are, conservative projections for the current state of the economy, which is bad enough, and hurts our revenue streams enough on its own, not to be compounded by having to take on the state's financial woes.
Ron, the state budget is May 1st as well, isn't it?
July.
It's July, isn't it?
And they're talking about a 6-month budget?
That's one thing that we've heard discussed. I don't
So-
know if that's,
So we will have our budget done before we know what's going to happen.
Yes.
So I see it as we may have to literally go in and make
Yes.
changes
We would
throughout this year a lot.
We would have to call an emergency budget meeting and would have to amend the budget. We have, from a staff level, already started to prepare about that, what we call a contingency plan. If we were to find out, because we don't feel that we would get ample notification of this, we feel it's probably going to come in a Dear John type letter, we need to be prepared. So we've already met as staff multiple times and put together some items that we would really have to take to the board to consider at that point in time, depending upon how severe it was.
And the money that's we're due, we get, later and later and later and later and later, so
yes,
that's going to have a negative impact on
yes, income tax that
everything.
used to be a standard was 30 days is now up to 90 days past due.
And that could go to, 120.
They're at
or-
120 for a lot of their other stuff already, for their vendors, their state budget, the proposed thing, one of the things that I read actually has in there that one of the ways they're balancing the budget, I think, is by issuing IOUs, which I'm not really sure.
$4.6 billion, I think.
How issuing IOUs balances your budget, but.
Was it the state of Illinois or somebody didn't have money to purchase ammunition?
That was an article that I think the chief sent that to me. It was state of Illinois.
It was ours, okay, I read that.
They
read that,
didn't
sure.
pay like a several $1,000 bill to a particular vendor in the state, so they ended up going to,
Yes.
it was Indiana, and
Yep.
bought several $100,000 of ammunition on credit. Is that correct?
Yes.
Not only that, but as bad as it is, I just got a letter from my doc. We have our seatbelt plans, our seatbelt warrant sign that says seatbelt safety zone and that. I got it now asked for is that if we're not going to use those, we return all the used equipment so they can give it to other departments that can. I've never seen what I looked at before, I gotta say.
You might be reloading your own ammo.
I suppose maybe
Totally
this,
got all those old signs.
this is the time to mention that there was some significant legislation that was passed, is it almost 2 weeks ago now? I don't remember the specific bill citation, but there was a proposal to create a 2-tier pension system in the state to address the tremendous pension liability that the state has. They actually passed the bill in about 24 hours, which is highly unusual for something to go through the General Assembly that quickly. However, in order to get it through that quickly, they took out the public safety pension part of that proposal, which is actually the more significant problem statewide. So they passed something that was quite a bit more benign than what they needed to pass. However, they did it in order to be able to prepare to issue more bonds because they need to go into more debt in order to keep their bills paid. And they were being told by the bond houses that in order to do that, they need to do something to demonstrate that they were trying to deal with the tremendous pension liability throughout the state. So that is something that's out there looming.
I don't think it affected the legislators either.
I don't think so.
Sure it didn't.
So you're working on, with staff, a contingency plan.
Uh-huh.
So
above and beyond what's contained in here, either in considerations or already in the budget.
Mark, it's the 2012 plan.
Call it what you'd like.
Well,
Armageddon, who's calling it Armageddon plan?
Is that something that we should be talking about? It sounds like you've already taken care of, and then if need be, we would have an emergency meeting to discuss it.
We will talk about it if and when it's appropriate.
Right.
You don't want us to
If we
get
need
any
to.
At this point, we don't have any concrete information to suggest that we need to do anything.
Right, okay.
But we will have options.
Hopefully, we won't have to get to that.
Any other questions on that? The next thing, the next section is our revenue trends for our various major revenue sources, such as income tax, our sales tax, where we've been at, what our trends are, and there's a synopsis on the top that you can read about how we come across the figures that we have, how we make our projections. There's a monthly sales tax comparison, which we're going to be going over in a little bit on here as well. Our regular sales tax and our supplemental sales tax, and then our income tax, as Fred mentioned, the fact that even without the state taking anything additional away, we're going down from having budgeted 2.3 million this current fiscal year. We don't believe we're going to be getting in that much. We're only going to be just above 2 million, so we're only budgeting 2 million this current fiscal year, or the upcoming fiscal year. So you're looking at a $313,000 decrease in income tax, and that's with nobody messing with it. That's just economic changes. So you can see we've got the local share. We base our projections loosely on the estimates from the IML. We're cautious with some of their estimates. We tend to be a little more cautious than they are, a little more conservative, but they have estimated for income tax that it will stay at the $77 per capita rate. We actually budgeted a little bit less than that, just to be a little conservative.
Weren't they off last year too, you said?
Yes, which is...
We were lower than they were last year.
Yes.
Lower than that, is that, am I correct? Okay.
That was the 2.3
Okay.
that we were slightly lower than their estimate.
Yeah.
That's the 313,000
Yeah.
reduction.
Yeah, we had used an estimate, and it was low. Then they came back and said it would be a little bit better, and we said, nah, we don't think so. So we kept it in at our original lower, more conservative, and then they came back like 2 months later and said, oh, we were way wrong. So not only was it not this new number, but it was like right down to where we were at or even lower. So we were okay. So we've continued to be conservative still and budget that way. Our hotel motel tax, in 2009, we had budgeted for 800,000. We brought in 663. So last year we budgeted 650, and this year we expect to bring in 471. So there's a couple of those still having huge, we brought in fiscal year 2009, 663 in hotel motel tax. So we thought, okay, we're still going to be conservative. We went down to 650, and now we're only expecting to get 471. So even with conservative estimates, we're seeing not even hitting, our projections not even hitting those conservative estimates, which is, just, it's impossible to predict what's going on right now.
Lisa, just to back up to utility tax, remember at our finance meeting, you talked about the telecom and the huge variance. Were we able to get any more information on that or figure out?
No, apparently those of the state have been a little busy. Spencer, have you heard anything?
No, we've put in a request for information from the state on the different vendors that have paid it to us, and so we can compare the difference. We've not heard anything back from them. It generally takes a while, but it's been taking a little bit longer.
That was a significant, wasn't it like
Yes.
200,000 or something?
And unexplained. That was part of the problem, is
Yeah.
we couldn't find that was something that was a trend or a standard with other communities. We were just kind of like out on our own here, so we're trying to figure out what it is, if there's been an error, or if this is something that's unique to Westmont that we need to know about.
Okay, thank
So
you. Just
we are continuing to pursue that anomaly. We'll let you know if and when we find out anything, because we're anxious
Somebody
to find
owes
out.
us. Wouldn't that be nice? They had to pay us that money?
Bank error in our favor would be awesome.
Decimal point.
Yeah, we will be very happy. Find that out. Okay, the much-awaited property tax.
Well, let me interject.
Oh,
one thing,
I'm sorry,
Steve.
you know what, I'm gonna stick, because I've got something else here, I gotta go back to, I'm jumping ahead here.
Lisa was fielding some questions last week about how much on the cell phone taxes. And it's possible we may ask for an audit because it doesn't, something's hinky. Everybody's paying a lot, but we're not seeing much income. And there've been other audits, you know, ComEd was audited by many communities and that. So when we get through the budget process, it's more than likely going to be a project we're going to ask Lisa to at least get started on.
Yeah, Ellen brought this up after the last meeting, after talking to a resident who had a question about the amount, the percentage and the amount that's listed as a municipal telecommunications tax, and the amounts were fairly high. And I had explained that was not the first time that I'd heard somebody question that. And so that's something that we need to look into. Either it's being misrepresented and is on the bill wrong, and it seems as if we're getting all this money, or if there's something askew with our receipts. So we're gonna look into how it's on the bill and what portion of that we're getting and what percentage.
Right.
So,
Thank you.
with our revenue, I wanted to go over the sales tax comparison and some of the overview of that. I kind of skipped through that pretty quick, and I don't want to neglect this particular slide. Our sales tax revenue are down 8% from the last fiscal year to date. That's $367,791. So even though we had a really bad sales tax year last year, this year, not looking so great either. We had a couple of glimmers of hope, which all of you know, each month I would come in very excited because our little orange line went above our little yellow line. You can see there on our monthly comparisons. The orange line is this current fiscal year, and these are our month-to-date receipts through our earliest receipt, which just came in last Thursday, which was January's sales. So they're 3 months in arrears, which is normal. They've not fallen behind on distribution of sales tax, thank goodness. So that's the normal schedule, we're 3 months in arrears. So what we saw in October was we got really close to where we were last fiscal year. November, we outpaced last fiscal year. In December, we were above last fiscal year at that point in time. We were hoping, we knew that we would see the drop like we always do in January after the Christmas sales. You always see January's one of the lowest sales months. And then you see it, go back up normally in February. Well, we didn't see that last February, but you can see the green and the red line from fiscal year 2007 and fiscal year 2008. You can see that's the standard trend.
Amazing.
Up in December, down in January, it starts to raise up again. And then we didn't see that last year. We saw that drop in January, and then it kind of was static in February. We were hoping that we would see the orange line this fiscal year staying above the yellow line, and it didn't happen. Our January sales were actually down over $40,000 in the 1 month from last fiscal year at this point in time. So essentially, they just took a little pin and popped my balloon. It was deflated because it doesn't, this is not something that we want to see. I mean, every single dollar coming in on here is vitally important to the community, and to see us go down when we really didn't expect it was upsetting. So we're hoping that, February we'll see it going up again, and we're not going to see it flat. And that maybe we'll rebound. Once again, we expected at this point in time, we thought really, when we saw October, November, and December, that we really thought, okay, we are rebounding. It wasn't, we saw anything huge. It was exactly what we expected, just to be right above where we were last year, and we were happy with that. And then the bottom kind of fell out with our figures on Thursday. So.
I did not know that information when I made my comments at the joint meeting with the park board last week.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's right.
Because I
there we were
Yeah.
a little
talked
optimistic.
about how we were tracking
Is that
okay.
all
but
sources?
I had not seen the January.
Including car
receipts.
sales?
Yes, that is all of our sales tax, our regular sales tax. So that includes automobile sales.
Okay.
And, some of that might be issues with particular car makers having issues with recalls and a lot of things that happened in the beginning of the year. So we're hoping that maybe that was just a 1-month thing and we'll rebound, and that really had an effect on it since we have such a large, auto sale base in our sales tax revenue. So, yeah, Ron didn't know until today when he saw the chart. So, any comments that he made were based on, previous to today, were based on our optimistic views of.
And it did look good until.
It did, it
January
really
came in.
did. Because you guys know, it's not often I get excited about these things, and I have been excited the last 2 months. And
They've already.
When you look
So,
at it historically, it's gone up and
teaches
down.
me.
Yeah, it's an
I
interesting.
was going to
trend.
ask if there was a way to track it with weather.
With weather?
Think about it. Think if we had a mild winter. Okay, so maybe February will go up.
Hopefully.
We can only hope.
Hopefully.
And last year, it was kind of tough, and I don't know. I just wonder if
I like the way you think, Mark. I'm willing to go track. I'll talk to a meteorologist, look at the Doppler radars for last
I
year,
just
see how
wonder if there's a
compared to this year, see how we are.
The better weather, people were out shopping.
Do you need a break?
I thought maybe the state,
I'm just trying to grab something.
We're always
that you could tie it in with.
we're always looking at that, and we actually.
We don't have any straws in the room to grasp at, Mark. Sorry.
Lisa, maybe the state started practicing. They kept some extra.
You think so? Oh, lovely. Yeah, maybe this is their way of gently telling us.
They have made mistakes in the past, and they do correct them
Yes.
eventually. So.
Yes.
So it could even be.
Usually after several phone calls going, this doesn't make any sense to us.
They want us to feel the pain early.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was wondering, had anybody heard anything? Maybe they did do something with sales tax and we just don't know about it yet.
No, January's down all over.
Yeah, so
Bad.
that bursts our bubble a little bit, but we're, once again, cautiously optimistic that this will be the low and we'll go up again.
But we had the mild February, so when our sales tax do go up, remember who said that?
Yeah.
And if they go down, don't say anything to me.
It's all about the weather.
Toyota sales are up
sales
despite
tax
the recalls, so
Good.
we may see a reflection.
Good. Well, we can hope, so.
Lisa? Just, I don't want to put you on the spot, but do we have any indication how that orange line would look had we not increased sales tax?
The orange line is just our
Would
regular.
it be on the page?
That's our regular sales tax rate, that's not the supplemental sales
Oh,
tax.
so it doesn't include that? Okay.
No,
Okay.
no. However, if you looked at our overall general revenues, for me to say,
you need a
general
break?
revenues, and,
Any problem?
yes, and our vehicle replacement fund and what we're doing with the supplemental sales tax, if we did not do that, you will see clearly the ramifications had we not done that in this budget.
Wow.
Because there's some important points coming up on the importance of that supplemental sales tax. What trouble we would be in without that.
It really is.
Okay. The next we have are our general fund revenue, and these kind of explain some of the things that we just talked about. Again, just reiterating the fact that we have a 1.4% decrease, $261,565 in general fund revenues. These are a combination of that 8% sales tax decrease, which is approximately $500,000. Our income tax decrease that we talked about, the $313,000, $175,000 decrease in hotel motel taxes, and then our utility tax decrease of 15%, which is $363,000 even. And that 1.4% decrease does include those three major revenues that we've included in here. The ambulance fee increases of $180,000, the proposed gasoline tax of $427,500, and the $700,000 in police pension property tax increase, which we're going to talk about now in our property tax section. Okay, you guys are ready? Ellen, Sue, you guys are ready with your questions?
Sue's been holding them all.
I know. Okay. Well, first, we've got everything that I'm going to be talking about, and the majority of the charts that are in this section are also in the PowerPoint presentation. There's some additional text in the budget document, but I will be saying most of that now it's mostly my speech here. A couple things, as trustee Seneca brought up just a couple of minutes ago, the tax assessor caught up with us. For the first time in the history that I could see of anything I had recorded, granted, I did not go back to the county archives to dig up exactly, but I don't know of a time when a community like Westmont, in an area that's not economically depressed or hasn't seen a serious decline, it has seen a decrease in their equalized assessed valuation village-wide. It happened for the first time, 0.57%. Granted, not large, which is good, but it's a triennial assessment, so we've got 2 more years of looking at this, and then depending upon how long it takes for home values and for property to rebound, if and when it does rebound, we could see it either remaining the same or continuing to go down a little. So our assessed valuation did decrease by 0.57% to $964,032,830, and we have a comparison on the upcoming sheets about where we were at. Last fiscal year, we saw over a 7% increase, and we had historically, from 2002 through 2009, seen between 8 and 9% increases every year. And I'll show that chart in the next chart so you can see the illustration on that. Our property tax rate increased from 0.4430 to 0.5375. And our property tax revenue is now, for the upcoming year, $5,179,590. You can see the overall tax rate history there on the PowerPoint. Back in 2000, it was at 0.5189, had been whittling away due to the fact that we were under the tax cap, and that's how it worked. It always went down there. We then, when we went home rule, the board had made a conscious decision to say we're remaining static. We want to remain static. We're not going to be increasing. We want to keep that rate static as much as possible. So you see in 2006, 7, and 8, we're right along there keeping that same static. And then there's the large increase in 2009, which is because of the efforts for the police pension property tax.
And all of that money goes into the police pension fund?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. When you levy, if you look, there are 5 lines here. The orange is police pension. The green is the fire protection district. The liability insurance is brown. IMRF and Social Security is red, and ambulance is in blue. When you levy an amount for these, it has to go towards that particular service. I cannot levy money in IMRF and Social Security and then decide, like we did this year, where, oh, you know what, I don't need this, so I'm going to give the employees raises and pay for that. You cannot do it. Illegally, you cannot. It's illegal. It's in violation of statute, and we are audited on these funds. We have to file appropriation ordinances, and the county's looking at them. We have to file these. In addition, other agencies will look at the amount that is levied and used. So IMRF comes in and does an audit and says, here's what you levied, here's what you paid. If the amount you levied was over what you paid, then you have to then use that money. It can't even be used for Social Security. Even in the same fund, you cannot commingle that. So it's very restrictive. So when you look at that orange line and the money that's coming in, and you see the rest of them are keeping fairly static, the IMRF Social Security did go up a little bit because we expected to see that large increase in the rate, which we didn't, which is good. So you see that go up a little, but the other 3 lines are very static going across, and then you see the orange jump dramatically. That is due to the fact that we have been going lower and lower on the contribution that is required, the actuarial required contribution that the police pension actuaries establish is needed to fund the liabilities. And the village has a portion of that. We have not been levying 100% of what that ARC is, that actuarial required contribution, and it has caused the police pension fund to have their overall funding continue to decrease to serious levels, which we will talk about when we get into that section as well. So the board made the decision with this last budget year and with the last levy year to levy 105% of last year's actuarial required contribution. So that is what that rate went up to. And that is the dramatic increase that you see. And to address Trustee Fleming's point, even again, yes, every single dollar of that portion of it will go immediately this year to the police pension. The village cannot keep the money and earn interest on it. When it comes in, and actually with the police pension, when it comes in, it doesn't even come into our accounts.
We don't
It goes,
see it.
no, it goes directly into a the police pension accounts, which are a completely separate FEIN number and a separate entity, and obviously the money is, the investments are controlled by the police pension board.
We're probably the only municipality in the state that increased it, certainly to the amount that we did.
Well, Lisa, are you going to explain about this later, or are you going to do that now? Because doesn't it have to be up to 100% or
Yes.
by a certain date?
Yeah.
And we didn't want to burden future.
Yes.
So you did a good job
We
explaining
are
that
going to
in the
discuss
past.
that at 2 points in
Okay.
time, because we do have arrears, but when we get into the police pension portion, which is supposed to be at the end of today, I don't know that we're going to make it there, but that's our last section for today, we will be discussing that. And we have the funding levels and the contribution rates, and the fact that there is legislation out there currently that is going to require the boards, the pension boards, to have 100% funding by a certain date. So we will be discussing that. And there's also the arrears that we'll be discussing as well. So this was the effort of the board to address that concern and not choosing to ignore it or to press it off like Trustee Forsley was just saying to, future boards or future citizens, whatever. To address a comment that Trustee Emery made, yes, that is correct. It's, I don't want to say unprecedented, but it's very rare. And the Police Pension Board had a discussion with our actuary to discuss the state of the pension. And when we told him what the board had done, he said, wow, congratulations, kudos to you guys for doing that, because that's unheard of. And I have one of my board members here who can testify to the fact that he said, great job on working together and addressing the issue. And kudos to the board for their commitment to the pension fund by doing that, because it is a large sacrifice, but it showed that you were addressing this and realized the nature of the issue and the problem.
Will we get a plaque for that, or what?
A pin.
Can't
afford it.
No.
Can't afford a plaque.
Kudos cereal bar.
Hey, cool. Hey, at least you can eat it.
So for whatever it's worth, he got a kudos, and the appreciation from the entire Police Pension Board really does appreciate the fact that
I think it has to be fully funded by 2021?
2033.
2033.
2033?
2033?
That's the law firm.
Yes.
So,
And everybody else is
Taking
lobbying to alleviate the burden.
They want to change the date in some cases.
Right.
Different
There's been a lot of
ideas
talk
on it.
about that. And a lot of it, I mean, just like we are, I mean, these are difficult economic times to be addressing a long-term liability issue like this, and to, during this, not only, be concentrating on your operating budget, but then to address this other issue that's been outstanding, and not choose to say, we're not going to look at it in hopes that legislation will change, or in hopes that they're going to change that date, to say, what, we're going to make attempts to address this now, says a lot for the dedication of the board to that. So
We're
that is,
thinking of our younger police officers who are currently under contract and will be retiring by 2033. Yeah. That's who we're thinking about.
yeah. So there's the large increase in the property taxes. We've got, in the binder, you'll see the increase, we've got the property tax revenue comparison in here, which shows the actual dollar amount in there, and you'll see a 20% increase. That is the increase for the $700,000 is the majority of it for of the property tax for the police pension. And then we have a distribution pie chart in here that shows, if you look, police pension is 26% of what we levy, liability insurance 5%, fire protection 6%, ambulance 21%, social security 26%, and IMRF 16%. So if you're looking at just retirement costs for the three retirement pools that we're dealing with, you've got 26, 16, and 26. So you're talking over 75% of the property taxes go toward paying pension obligations, required pension obligations. None of these which we can opt out of or not pay. So. So that's some fun stuff. Next.
Lots of laughs.
Okay. We have a revenue detail in the budget binder section, and I just want to explain what these are. I'm not going to go through details in here. This is for your leisurely looking at, but there's two pie charts here because we look at revenues in two ways. Number one by department and number two by source. So there are two pie charts on here for our general revenue in the book. The first one is by department, and the second one then is by source. So you can look and see if you're looking at taxes overall, all of the taxes that we collect, 78% of our general fund revenue is in taxes, 14 million. Sales tax, income tax, hotel, motel, property, all of them combined. If you look at permits and fees at 13%, so you can see each of the revenue sources there and the amount that it is, and then by department. So if we look at the police department, 2.2 million, Ellen, there's some of your, that you talked about earlier with red light and with court fines and things, so 12%, that's included in that 2.2 million there. So you can see in general revenue, which includes sales tax and our general taxes, is 64%. And then the white sheets that follow it are the detail, so you can look through here by department in the white or by source in the yellow, the same numbers, just split up differently. So you can find any of the individual line items you want. So and also the descriptions. So if you look at like our utility taxes, we've got on here the NICOR portion, the ComEd portion, the telecommunications portion, and the philosophy for which we used and talked about in the revenue section on how we decide on those. So if you're looking for something in particular, in like the clerk's department, for vehicle stickers, we bring in $150. So you can look through at the actual detail and see what it is for any one of those individual revenue sources.
In the departmental revenue where you have the state income tax of $2 million, assumes a 7% share,
Yes.
and then it says reduction to 7% would negate 600,000 of that 2 million.
Yes.
So you mean reduction from 7% to 0, isn't it?
No, it should say assumes 10% share.
Yeah, this is
Originally had it assume a 7%, but then
we changed it, yeah.
we
Okay.
increased it to the 10%
That is a
because we
typo.
were not sure.
So we currently get the 10% share. If they were to reduce it to 7%, so if they were reducing to 3%, which is kind of what was floating out there, that would be 600,000 that would come
Okay,
off.
got
So
it.
thank you for noticing that.
Thank you.
That is confusing because it was wrong. Which is why it was confusing.
Assumes a 10%.
So
Reduction to 7%.
can look through those figures. All right, so now summaries and revenues are done. Any questions before we get into expenses? With an hour left.
Do you need a break?
Does anyone need a break?
No, seriously, because you've been doing a great job.
I know, as long as I get
To be exhausted already.
couple of swigs of pop, but I'm fine.
Okay.
You guys need to ask more questions so I can stop talking for a little bit. Tired of
Dog
hearing-
licenses, there's nothing in 2009, 2010, or 2011, so are we, is this for the volunteer canine unit?
No, you don't see the,
That would be,
yes.
Oh, I have to pay $200 for each of my dogs?
You don't see the history on the individual, only on the group total. So we did bring in a couple bucks for some dog licenses in prior years.
Okay.
So comment on the cell towers, trustee Seneca, myself, it's close to 180,000 or something like that of cell tower money. Cell phones coming in.
That's just cell tower rentals.
That's rental.
Just
Yeah,
a
I mean,
tower.
That's
what I
rental,
mean,
yeah,
rental
that's
space.
the antenna rental.
The antenna rental, about 180,000?
Yeah, that's what the companies pay us annually to put their cell towers on our water tower.
We have an escalator
Yeah.
built into each of the, I forget how much it goes up.
We
each
should be
year.
knocking on doors.
I don't know.
Hey, we have space on
Our
our
IT manager would know that, he's listening
We
from
can't turn
from
the
somewhere.
line under the.
He would be able
Can
to
we
answer
go
that.
in?
That's,
Look for them?
it's a lot of money.
All right, so here's what we have in general fund revenues. Here comes Glenn, probably to talk about.
But he's
Always the timing.
What's the escalator for the cell tower built in, do you remember? For the contracts?
Question. No, I don't, but I do know it's pretty steep. It was negotiated about 10 years ago, and that's the one that we
I'll
currently
look it up.
use, so.
Can we get more of them?
I was just amazed how much money we get in revenue.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was
Yeah,
that
we
much.
just put a fourth one on, which you guys approved a
clear.
couple months ago over at the 55th Wilmette Water Tower. That about maximizes the amount of ground space we could use at 55th and Wilmette. So that one's pretty well filled.
63rd.
63rd, we've had no bites because we got the two standard
there's the
towers
big
right
ones
next
right
to us
down
that
there.
most of them are hopping on. So we have Sprint on that one. We do have room on that tower. And if we ever end up with a third tower somewhere else in town, especially up in the north end where I know Steve May wants to put one, I do know that there's a lot of void in that area for cell tower usage. So,
Yeah, Verizon's not on here.
yeah, no, Verizon doesn't have a tower anywhere in our town, so.
You see that map on TV? You ever see that map with all the red spots? You see that white part right there? That's
Westmont.
That's why we actually moved our police department from Verizon to Sprint, because we have very poor coverage of Verizon in town, and Sprint has about 7 towers in town.
I never
so.
have a
Verizon
problem.
and AT&T, they share.
I don't have a problem
I've never had a
with
problem
Verizon.
with Verizon yet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The string in the two cans.
He emerges from beyond.
Yeah. Yeah. Hello.
Okay. An overview of our general fund expenses. Couple of things. We've got current percentage of reductions from the current fiscal year that we're in, the 2009-2010 budget. This was in our fund summaries as well. In general administration, we have a 0.9, so less than 1% increase of $25,660 in the general and administration combined departments, and we will go through those when we're in here. In commissions, we have a 16.3% decrease, about $7,000, although we do have to look at the Fire and Police Commission because I believe there are some requests in there that did not get included in the budget, so we will get back to you on that. The police department has a 1.5% decrease of $122,892. The fire department, 2.7% of $112,000. And the public works department, a 4.5% decrease of $186,475, for a total general fund decrease of the 2.1%, or $402,710. And that was all the things that were highlighted in the items included, the preliminary cuts items.
It's amazing.
So,
That's phenomenal.
yeah.
What's phenomenal about that is we cut last year.
Yes.
I know, it's like,
And for them to go back
And find more.
more
From a slim budget.
is phenomenal.
We had mentioned at the, in one of the Administration Finance Committee meetings and at our last, our little budget workshop that we had when we passed out the binders last Monday, that a lot of this was done, and you saw these items. I mean, these were not big things. This was $350 here, $80 there. I mean,
Adds up.
people were down to, should I put in $5 I can take off for this thing? It got whittled down that much, and the elimination of what we call the unforeseen emergency things, the contingency money or miscellaneous, where you say, you know, I've got $700 in miscellaneous in case, like in ITs, you know, in case one of our projector bulbs goes and it's $600, you know, we won't spend it if it doesn't go, but if it does, we've got some funds. Those are completely eradicated. I mean, there's no unforeseen emergency money in here. If we have an unforeseen emergency and it's more than about $100, we're gonna have to look through and go, okay, what are we not
Passing
buying?
the hat.
Yeah. Seriously, what are we not going to buy that we were budgeted to buy, a couple reams of paper, whatever it is, if there's an unforeseen emergency? Because we were slim with that anyway. There's no cushion now. And that's how it was done.
Did a great job.
Yeah. So that's where we are with the overall look. And now, as we get into the individual departments and divisions, we start with legislation. And we had a couple things going on with legislation. First of all, if you look in your binder, we are proud to present a new series of charts, which we know how much I love my charts. On the top, we have, for each of the departments, we have the budgeted expenses, the pie chart that we have, which has the major expense categories, the percentage, and the dollar amounts. So it's an easy viewing. So if you look at legislation, we know that in legislation, the largest expense is $250,000 for liability insurance, which is 33% of the budget. So it's nice. It's a nice snapshot of what our expenses are, the dollar amounts there, and the percentages. On the bottom, I know last year several trustees had asked, well, how did that compare to last year or a couple years? So we have put here a 5-year expense comparison for each of the departments and divisions, so you can see the trends and what's happened. Now, you're going to see something that happened here in legislation that's kind of a little goofy in the fact that there's an increase in there, and much of that comes from the fact that there's a $50,000 increase in liability insurance premium. So you'll see that. Can't do anything about that. Can't cut that. We've got a total of a 2.6 increase in legislation, which is $18,800. It also includes many items from the Convention and Tourism Fund that we said we moved from there to legislation, which includes the Chamber external funding of $58,000, some general landscaping, village-wide landscaping for $5,000, and the Public Information Coordinator of $41,000, the retainer, as well as increased liability insurance premium of $50,000. So when we do the expense comparison, we do include in the prior years those expenses for the things that we've moved, but for stuff like the $50,000 for the insurance premium, that's just an increase there, straight there.
Lisa, why is liability at $250 in legislation and in property tax distribution, it's at $257,395? I mean, it's $7,500 difference.
Well, actually, are you talking that we levy more for it? Because a portion of it, the other half of liability insurance is paid for out of water fund. So we will actually probably pay whatever it is, the $257 or out of here, and then the balance of it would then go to the water fund. What happened was it went up significantly this year, and when we were putting the budget together, actually didn't look at the property tax and change it by the $7,500, but that money will be coming in, going to pay that, and then the balance will be paid for out of water. So.
The 25% increase in liability insurance, Ron, is that something that should be discussed in executive session as to whether it was experience that drove it up or what it was?
Well, it is experience-driven. Our formula is based upon revenue, and then there's what is called an experience modifier. So obviously our revenues haven't driven it higher. So yes, there is a significant experience factor that would cause that. Now it's based over change it a 5-year average. It used to be a 3-year average.
Yes, now it's 5.
If the board chooses and you want to have a more specific discussion about the litigation that may have caused that, I'd be happy to provide that information.
Yeah, I'd like an executive session on that because I want to go over that with you.
Now, the other thing that you have to understand is that the total that we pay isn't even the total premiums. We have reserve funds that offset the total portion. This is just the portion that we don't take out of reserve fund. We have historically used a portion of our reserves to pay that, but the premium went up so significantly that we could not take it all out of the reserve without depleting that to a level that we didn't feel then comfortable with. We like to have a cushion there for something. So the amount that you're seeing in here isn't even the total premium that you see in the budget.
Historically, I should point out too that our premiums have been pretty good over the long period of time because we've had generally good experience for a long period of time. you're going to periodically have years in which you're going to have bad experience. The insurance pool we belong to has a system, they call it a watch list system, where if you have an extensive period of time where you have payouts or costs, liability costs that exceed what you contribute, then you get put on this watch list. It has to exceed 100% for several year period. And then they also factor in the score that you get on your annual LEAP, not LEAP, but IMAP score. It used to be called the LEAP. So historically, we've done very well, but every once in a while you're going to have a year or two where you're not going to do so well.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm requesting a session. We can talk about that.
Sure.
In this section, Lisa, is this one, even though we kind of brought up before, we talked about breaking it down when Trustee Seneca was talking about the conferences and I was talking about the
Yes.
REITs and stuff like that. Is this where we
Yeah,
want
we're
the
gonna
discussion?
start to talk about each of those individual items.
Lisa, I am a little confused about why, if there's a amount due in liability insurance for this village, why we're not shown the total amount and just said this may not be all of it and we pay the rest out of reserves. I would certainly like to know.
Sure. You want a history of what the actual premiums have
Do it in
been?
a separate, yeah, because
Sure.
this is,
Well, it's not out of our reserve. You're talking about the reserve with the pool, right?
The pool reserve, yeah, the reserve that
okay,
we have.
because you
It's
said
not the
it's paid out of
emergency
reserve
reserve
funds,
fund.
which
Okay.
did not
Yes,
make
I
sense.
apologize. We
Just
have
like,
reserves with Irma.
Right,
Right.
that's different.
Okay.
Just like we also have reserves with our...
IPVC.
Yeah, the two different
Yeah,
pools.
okay, because the Irma reserves are different than what is in this budget
Yes.
as our general reserves.
You're absolutely right. I'm sorry.
Money
I
that's held by Irma.
Yeah,
on
should
our-
have
Okay.
been,
All right,
should have
just
been more
clarifying,
specific
thank you.
about that. Yeah, it's with our Irma reserves. Do you still want to?
No, that's
okay.
fine.
Okay. Yeah, if it was something that was paid for out of our funds cash that we had on hand, we would be listing it fully, but.
Yeah, you'd have to
Yeah,
account for it.
yeah, but we're offsetting it with those reserves. The next sheet that we have is the budget variance report that we have for each of the departments, which explains any increases or decreases in excess of $1,000 and 10%. So it's a kind of an easy way to not have to go through and look and figure out what went up, what went down. So these are your major changes. So you can see we had a $135,000 increase of all the things that we moved into legislation from Convention and Tourism Fund. The $50,000 in increase in liability insurance premium, and then a 17% reduction, $3,320 in conferences and training that was decreased to more closely reflect what we were doing. As we had said before, there's things in there that are budgeted that, we might have said 4 people were going to go to this particular outing and only 1 went. So we made some adjustments just based on what our actual expenses were and decreasing those a little bit. And then we had $32,540 moved from dues and subscriptions from the Convention and Tourism Fund into here as well. The following sheets then, they look it's a new format this year. These were the ones that we had before, and we had little comment sections on the bottom. Well, we consolidated and came up with a new format. So this is the actual the detail, where you're going to see each of the line items again, like we had in the revenue, where you can see each account. This is the detail that Ellen was talking about before with the conferences and training, where you'll see under a category or an account of professional services, legal fees, and the exact dollar amount, and the descriptions in there to explain as much as possible each of those pieces of that particular account number. So you can go through and see exactly what it is. On the items that were moved from Convention and Tourism, whenever we move something from another account or another department, or in this case, another fund, we always segregate those out so that you can see. So if you look in professional services, talked about those things that were moved, the landscaping, the public information coordinator, and the external funding that were moved from Convention and Tourism. You can see we have under there from Convention and Tourism, and it's listed out separately so you can see those expenses there. On the liability insurance, we reference the account that it is split with, so if you wanted to look at the total cost out of the budget, you can then reference that account number to put those two together. We do that with the grant accounts as well, or when there's an offsetting revenue account, we will reference it and say, see revenue account here to show ins and outs if there's a 50% split on a grant, or if there's a reimbursement coming in, say for basic training or something in the police department, we reference the other account that pertains to this, so you can get an idea of the whole picture when you look at it. Some of the things that we talked about on that second page, if you flip it over, or the second half of the first page, you'll see the conferences and training in there with all of the explanations. So that's something that Trustee Seneca was talking about. You can then see in there all the ones that are listed, that are still in the budget, the dues and subscriptions, and then those miscellaneous services with the Christmas wreaths that you were talking about, Trustee Forsley. That those dollar amounts that are still in there, that 6,000 that we then put on the pink sheets to say, if you chose to fully eliminate that particular program, that would be the impact on the budget.
For legislation, luckily that's not a lengthy one, but Lisa, can you explain on the first page, after the wages for the board and the mayor's stipend, what was it in 2009 actual wage awards and bonuses?
Okay. We have talked, even far before I got here, was talking about moving to a merit-based system for raises of some sort. We have historically given what was referred to previously as a COLA, a cost of living adjustment. We now call it a general wage adjustment if we got them. We talked about moving to a merit-based system. So that was the first year and the only year that we did it.
Okay, so that would have been for other than, because in this section you have the village board, but this is not wages and awards.
No. It had nothing to do with the village board.
Okay, it would have been other departments.
Exactly. It was all of the non-union staff was in the program. It was called an API, or
Annual performance
incentive. Thank you. I can't believe I forgot that. A lot of discussion when you come up with acronyms on what it's going to be. So an annual performance incentive, and it was based on, everyone was given a review and based on scoring, and then there was some, adjustments that were made. Then the raise that you received was tied directly to that score.
Okay. No, I understand all that. I'm just curious, the placement of it.
Yes, it is in legislation because rather than putting it into the departments, it was in a part that it was easy to isolate and identify and to budget for it there. But no, that did not have anything to do with compensation for the board or related to the board. The board was not part of that program.
In professional services, there's 3, strategic planning services is budgeted $10,000. Chamber external funding is budgeted at $58,000. I'd like to see that come down. And the public information coordinator stipend of $41,000, because there are other things for which that individual is paid. I'd like to see that reduced.
Okay. Did we want to, right now, discuss that in further detail, those items? Does the board feel it? This is kind of what we talked about earlier, that, when you get to those, did you want to talk about those now?
Sure.
Discuss that and make recommendations, come up with a direction for us on those items since they've been brought up. The strategic planning services, this was for, Ron, can you help me with what this 10,000 covered?
Well, it was in the budget, but because of the recent discussion regarding the comprehensive plan, and I think there was a recommendation actually came from the Citizen Finance Committee, we were postponing it, but we had carried it over from this year into the next budget. However, I think the comprehensive plan is still the higher priority of the two, so.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think question that it raises is you've got $10,000 carried over in the budget, and I thought we had looked at comprehensive plan will cost us about $100,000.
No.
It
Oh,
won't.
the comprehensive
60,000?
plan.
It's
Yes.
60,000 and it's in capital projects currently, still
Okay.
in there.
Okay.
But that's 60,000 on top of this 10.
And that's 60,000 this year and then another 60,000 next year.
Correct.
Split it.
Over the next.
Yes,
So what's the
over the next 2
10,000?
years, 120.
Strategic plan. It's a different sort of thing. It's a board initiative with staff to do planning that goes beyond, it's not just land use planning, which is the,
did.
yeah. Right. It's a different type of planning mechanism. It's, I think it was the recommendation of the Citizens Finance Committee that you kind of do it in a certain order, that you do the comprehensive plan first and then revisit the strategic plan.
Which means then if that's the case, we would take this out now, and then,
Take it out.
so once you get the comprehensive plan, then you have this.
Then you bring it back.
You do the strategic plan to mull over what you're gonna.
Right.
Right.
So we're not gonna have that in this budget year. Might as well take it out.
So we can remove that then?
Remove that.
Okay,
Yep.
we shall do that.
What's everybody's thoughts about 58,000 to the chamber?
I mentioned earlier, I'd go, what do they recommend? The
I'd go
8,000?
with,
Because I agree with, you don't want to pull the rug out,
No.
but we do need to start pulling back. I'm okay with the recommendation of 8,000.
Take out 8 and pay them and give them 50?
Now, Ron had mentioned that it might be wise to take a look at the actual budget and maybe select an amount that coincides with some programs. Did you want us to come up with something close to that dollar amount, or do you want 8,000 regardless
Well, I know,
of?
Trustee Klebanow had asked whether we were going to see the chamber's budget and see what they were doing with the money and how much they needed. Did that ever happen, Pat?
No.
We did actually get that document, and I did distribute it.
It was in a Friday report, I
Yeah.
think.
I can redistribute that.
Yeah, did you look at it?
I'll pull it out then.
Okay.
I think we got that a while ago.
But, I mean, we could come back at the next workshop with a recommendation of, we can look at the work program and try to get something close to that.
Of approximately that amount?
That's fine.
Okay.
I mean, at least, I agree with the Citizens Finance to cut 8,000, but it's, if it's 50,000, 20 of which is gratis, I think we should at least have a recommendation what the staff thinks. And then,
What's the rest of the board before? I know we want more, I know some of us would like more, but to start?
I think that's reasonable.
and the stipend for the public information coordinator, the Citizens Finance Committee recommended, how much of a cut there?
Do away with it.
11%?
Calendar.
11% recommendation reduction.
And I personally think there's a lot of things that I think we could cut on that.
Cut on which?
I'm going to take a minute and be a bad guy. We've got our staff giving back furlough days and working abbreviated weeks and taking, no wage increase, no merit increase. I think it's time this board ponied up. I think we should at least give the equivalent of 6 furlough days and not be paid for 6 meetings. Legally, there's got to be some way we can come to the table. I mean, I think we need to pony up. I don't know, we don't have an attorney here. Oh, we do have an attorney here. We don't have a village attorney here.
Don't do that to me.
But I think we need to at least look into it.
We could, but we do pony up because we go to a lot of meetings that we don't get paid for. I'm presuming we didn't get paid for the Park District.
No, we don't get
No, we
paid
don't
for
get
any of
paid
that
for any
anymore.
A lot
extra.
of things that we go to, so.
But we do get paid 4 meetings a month.
I think if you
Some
take
of them
one-
are 15 minutes long.
So what?
Well, I think by eliminating what we're trying to eliminate, and I don't disagree that the cuts need to help, we need to start cutting ourselves, but I think the IML is where,
Right.
we're paying for that, we're paying for,
I-
I think.
Whatever
we
it
pay
is,
for
I
everything.
think we need to pony up a little bit. I mean, we're
Well-
asking our employees to do
Okay.
things that we're not even considering doing ourselves.
And what I do with what I get paid, I put right back into this village. I don't keep it in
Well,
my,
no,
I
I'm
don't
not
keep it in my
questioning
pocket.
that.
So
I mean, I'm
it-
sure
it
we all
goes-
do
it
good
goes to
things
a
with the
good
money.
thing. I mean, what difference does it make, Sue?
Well-
What does it have to do with the public info coordinator stipend? What does that have to do with that, which is
Well,
what
it
we're
has
talking
to
about
do
now?
with cuts. We're talking about expenditures, and it's an expenditure.
Okay, then we need to cut
And
that.
I think it would be nice, just as, Mayor Daley, for example, he's
Yeah.
taken 26 days.
Well, good.
We're elected officials. I think it would be a nice gesture to do that on behalf of our employees, to feel some of the pain that they're feeling.
I think for all the time that the mayor puts in, his stipend's way low. I don't.
Yeah.
See, I look at it as a volunteer job. I think we're volunteers more than we are paid employees.
Well, then volunteer. Give yours up. If you want to give it back, volunteer then, Sue.
I guess you guys
Do
don't
it.
want to give your money back.
Well, I give it, every dime that I make from
Everything
this
I make
village
here goes back into this
back.
village.
I mean, there's swings at Miller School,
Yeah.
and there's
Contributed back,
IML,
contributed to their
and
library.
there's every luncheon and everything. I give out more than I get from the village. That's.
Those are the kinds of things I think most of us would be doing even if we weren't on this board. I mean, it's the kind of people we are.
Oh, I don't know.
I think maybe
don't
we
know.
should
Well, if
vote.
that was the case, then we'd see the whole village involved in it.
Right.
But we don't.
Yeah.
We don't.
We don't see everybody at all the functions.
We get a.
No, we don't,
constantly get a
unfortunately.
barrage of invitations to go to meetings, to go to dinners, to go to whatever.
I know it's something
And-
Ginny feels
and-
strongly about.
And we pay for most of that on our own. And once this budget's.
I think we should pay
set, we'll
for
be
all of
paying
it on
all
our
of it.
own.
But
All
I'm
of
looking
it.
at future trustees. You could have somebody here who's really financially strapped, but could be a great trustee, and you're strapping
But we
these
could have a
people who
wonderful
wanna do it
village
because they're
employee.
not going to take out of their children's mouths just to be able to find time here. They may even have to pay for a babysitter. There's so many things you don't look at. You don't look at yourself. You got to look at the entire picture.
And I guess, and Pat, that's a really good point, because that's what I'm thinking about the employees. We've got employees in those situations where we've cut their salary, we've taken the equivalent of furlough days, we've asked them to do more with less, and those are the same people that have the same issues as all of us. We're all facing that. Everybody is cash strapped right now. And I just, and if you guys don't want to do it, that's fine, I'll go along with it, but I'd like to go on record as saying, I think we should.
But we even said this, at any meeting we can that we can combine, we're willing to combine to
wanna do
help
it.
cut the cost.
Right, after I suggested it.
So,
Wow.
so, I mean-
You want an award for suggesting it? Thank you, I'll give you an award.
the biggest thing here is that if we're gonna do this, then if we're asking our employees to hold their wage, we're asking them to take the furlough days, what you're asking for, how can we justify and sit here and say that we can pay for a contract employee? How can you justify that, Sue?
I'm not tying the two together.
Well, we're talking about a particular item here, and then you went off on the wage thing. We weren't talking about that.
Well, I do think that should be discussed in executive session when we're talking about an employee.
We can't.
You cannot,
We
he's not an
can't.
employee, he's a contractor.
He's a
We cannot-
contractor. We
discuss-
can't talk about him in executive session.
There is a
We
way.
can't.
Yeah, there is a way we can do it.
Well,
Yes, there
The
is.
thing you could talk about is if you
Yes.
want to take the workload and you want to discuss either bringing it in-house as a part-time or a full-time employee, then that would be an acceptable discussion, right?
And actually, when you, just to revisit the whole contractor situation, I mean, we have other contractors. How come they're not being, how come we're not talking about them?
Actually, we do have cuts in here for other contractors, just to.
We do have
Well,
others in
the
there.
other thing is, this is the direction we have decided as a board we'd like to go. We'd like to do more contract because we're not paying benefits. We're not paying, vacation and insurance and things like that.
Time out. We'll talk about it in executive session, okay? Because,
Well, no, I think that's a valid point.
okay?
I mean, what do you think, Mayor? What do you think, Ginny? What do people think? Mark, Ellen, what do you think? I mean, we're going the direction of trying to do contractors.
Right, absolutely. That's the direction that we've already defined we want to go.
So,
Like it or not, there are full-time positions that are being eliminated and those services contracted out. It's happening everywhere, and we have to look at that.
I think
Ourselves.
we look at it, but I don't believe we've eliminated a full-time position to contract out. And I don't know that any of us, I know I'm not comfortable taking employees that have just worked so hard and dedicated to start thinking contract. I mean, I know it's a savings, I understand the benefits, but we may have to look at it, but I am not willing at this point, I'm not willing to give up what we've got. And I can't put a dollar amount on the people that we've got in this village that are working for us right now. I can't. And to say, I can get cheaper for doing it out here. This person's getting 50,000 and I can do it cheaper for 40, but this person's given me 20 years or 15 years and they've took a zero. I can't do that. I just can't. So at this point, I mean, I'm not saying we shouldn't look at it. You always keep it on the back burner. But personally, my own feeling is you can't put a dollar amount on the pride that our employees have given this community.
Oh, I got no
Well
problem
said.
with the employees within this village.
Well said.
I would hate to see any of the employees
Right.
put in that situation.
So I mean, we keep looking at it, I think. You always got to keep your options open.
Yep.
Absolutely.
I think you always have to. What was it? There was one, are we getting paid for tonight?
No.
Special meeting.
No, I mean, that's my point.
Special
In
meeting.
my dog walker.
No, I mean, whether we get going.
We don't get paid for
switching
any
tracks
special
now.
meeting.
Special meeting. We haven't done that in years.
No, I
that
know,
2 years
you know, when we talk about getting, I gotta be honest with you, I don't know when we get paid and when we don't get paid. I don't look at it.
Volunteer canine.
And the money you
handler.
get is nice, and if it goes back into the community, it goes back into the community, which we all try to do. So, and I think if we can cut, the IML, which we've cut some of that, and I know some of you've already paid, I think we cut out the chamber dinner, that we pay for our own on that. And some of those functions that we try to go to be representatives of the village, we are paying ourselves. So the money that we make, as Sue said earlier, kicks right back into that. And not all of it maybe, but a lot of it does.
A lot of it does.
And I do believe that we should look to combine as many meetings
and
as we can.
continue to combine.
Cut
The only thing
down.
we have to be careful when we do that is we're putting, the committee of the whole is where sometimes last-minute things could be put on an agenda, and it's got to be very thought out before they pull it together, because you may end up having something on one meeting and, you can't put it on the agenda because you did your committee of the whole and board together. So they really, whoever's pulling the agendas together, the village manager and staff really has to watch carefully.
Well, if you want to go,
It has happened.
if you want to go to that extent, technically, we don't even have to have a committee of the whole meeting.
No, I know. We
Okay.
don't have to, but it does.
So, I mean, if you're worried about cutting your costs,
Combine them.
We actually talked about that.
I know.
It's just that it does put staff in a bind because most of the time on the committee of the whole, we're adding last-minute POs.
But
we have
if the
last-minute
agenda
things.
is printed, committee of the whole, we don't add that much. Usually Ron might have some
We've
purchase orders
reduced
or
the
something.
amount.
We've reduced it,
Changing
but
our
we still, almost every
procedures.
time, Thursday, you're going over what the agenda should say for Monday because you've made changes.
On the
And
regular
that's what
part
we're
of
going to
the
have to be
agenda.
really careful of if we combine the two of them.
But you're doing it in an open meeting. I mean, you're changing the wording maybe on something.
Well, yeah, but you got to watch the legal status on that, because if you say something on for the committee of the whole, and you change some of the wording, it may make it where you can't vote on it for, an hour later, because.
You may postpone it
because
to the
you
next
you'd
meeting.
have to
Well, then we just
it.
postpone
We
it.
postpone it.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying that we have to be very careful when we do it, but it can be done.
But it's a, Sue would get her wish of cutting our stipend if we combine the meetings. Most towns do. We pretty much, by the end of the committee of the whole discussions on everything, we know how we're gonna vote. And all the people on staff that stay here and labor through this stuff with us would not have to do that. I mean, that
Right.
would just be
And
like
then we come in on a Monday
vacation day
night,
for
and
them,
it takes
'cause
20
they go
minutes.
home at night. But, that's something I'd certainly be willing to look at, is do what other villages do. We discuss it, and then we vote on it.
Right. Done.
First and third Mondays, or first and third Thursdays, whatever you want to do.
Whatever.
We could sure try it. I mean, it's something we could try.
Did you hear all the objections out here?
Yeah,
Chief
staff.
Mullen likes being here all the time.
Please don't do it, except for Tom, because that's less podium time.
To talk about his vehicles.
Well, is that something that you're just going to pursue as a board?
We can try for this year, as many as we can combine. Let's see how it works out.
Yeah.
We may
That
as well
was the
just
goal.
try it and
I think
see how
we're
it goes.
just do it.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, going back to this for the public information, now, is this coordinator, is this a full amount? I mean, or
No.
this?
This is the
It's under
retainer
different
portion.
areas?
Yes.
Okay.
This is the retainer portion, not for special projects like the calendar and the newsletter and
Well.
some other things that come out of other accounts.
Okay, but I mean, this is for the main portion of his, the
Just the
coordinator.
retainer.
The retainer.
Majority of it.
So it's out of the special things he's assigned to, okay.
And I'd be happy to distribute the board. I know you've looked at the contract in the past. I'd be happy to get you a copy of, what makes up that retainer portion of it.
That would be helpful.
Yeah, that would be good. Does that outline responsibilities and,
It does. This has been a topic of discussion off and on for many years, and, we went to a retainer basis, say like 15 years ago. And those responsibilities have changed over the years. What he's doing now is a lot of it's public relations related work, and it's work with special events. There aren't as many, I'm just looking at a copy of the contract here. He used to work with some of the commissions. We've eliminated some of those commissions. But he is doing more work with special events, which is something that we didn't have years ago.
A little more.
So it's all kind of balanced out. I mean, you could look at it that way over the years.
And special events, though, are they all volunteer?
Except for the secretary.
He's acting as
Part-time.
as the village staff
Staff
liaison
liaison.
to the special events. That's what he's paid for. But yes, the volunteers do not get paid for that.
so if that position went away, we would need to, in some form,
Reassign it.
replace most of it.
Well, we have to take the bits and pieces of the different responsibilities and reassign it to different people, different departments. Which, as you noted earlier, we have cut staff in different departments, and we are doing more now than what we were doing with, in years past.
It would be worth looking at the contract. I don't remember it, to
Yeah,
be
I'd like
honest
to
with
see
you.
it.
Yeah, I'd like to see it too.
I'd like to see it.
Does he actually keep track of hours, or does he just go by the duties performed?
Not under the retainer part.
Duty.
He's not required to provide hours for that. Any of the work, and he does have in his contract an hourly rate for any work that goes beyond this core element of the retainer. For that, he would need to submit hourly bills detailing by hour.
Did we pay any of that
I
last
can
year?
tell you, in the years that we've had this contract, he has never submitted a bill for that.
It's never on the finance ordinance. I look every
The only
every
thing we've
time.
ever paid, I can't remember a time that we've ever paid him for anything over and above what he
His
gets
stipend.
for his stipend, plus the additional specific project work, which is the newsletters and the calendar. He does do a lot of things that we request on kind of a spur-of-the-moment basis as far as public
Takes
relations.
a lot of photos, and he's out there at a lot of
Photos,
different events.
press releases, that sort of thing.
And he loves what he does. You can tell that in his work.
I'm still having a hard time justifying it.
I'd like to postpone that item.
Get back to you with
We can come
additional
back and
information
talk
on
about
that.
it
Yeah, until we can look at the
Should the
Yeah.
agreement.
Yeah.
Ron, how would the responsibilities of the WAG group, Westmont Auto Group,
Doesn't
impact in any
really, doesn't
way?
fit into the contract at all. As I understand the discussion with the
No,
WAG group,
that would be-
a
that
separate
would be-
contract,
Above and beyond.
the Chamber of Commerce.
But that's another project that he has taken on his own. and put a tremendous amount of time and
He's already done a
effort
lot of
into.
work on that, which he has not billed us.
That we've never been billed for.
That we've never been billed for.
Oh.
And hopefully that's going to be a success. But there is a tremendous amount of work, and there's no one on staff to do that work. Larry Forsberg is not going to do all that work. He will help.
Well, if we're cutting his funding.
And we're gonna cut his
I doubt they're
funding.
going to have much money or time to.
Looking at this WAG project as a way to generate a lot of revenue for all of our special events, we have to be careful about how we look at those expenses and what they may bring us in the future if it's successful, and we don't know that at this time.
Is there anything else in the legislation portion? Any specific items?
Turning the page.
Page
Onward.
2. We're on to page 2.
Onward.
Board leader, I think to pay mayors and managers and stuff, we have to keep that, an IML.
For subscriptions, you mean?
Yeah, at the top, where conferences and training.
It's, yeah.
Okay.
You mean going to it, paying to go to it?
No, that's our membership.
That comes down later in
Down
dues
here.
and subscriptions. Board leadership training, you guys are all good. I'm happy to be a monkey with a machine gun. So I think that's 4,000 we could get rid of.
Absolutely.
Okay, is the general consensus from the board?
IML, aside from the mayor, I think we should all pay for our own.
Yep.
So those 4 items,
Okay.
some of those four should come out.
Agreed.
I think under from the convention.
Trustee,
I have a question. Just, did we want to, as one person brings this up, because I'm hearing people saying agreeing, but I don't get a general consensus from the board, and we need some direction on that. So when we're looking at the board leadership training, is anyone opposed to Trustee Emery's suggestion that that be removed from this budget?
Nope, take it out.
Not at all.
Okay, so we can remove. Thank you. Okay, what was your next one?
IML, everything but the mayor. We can all pay our own way.
Everyone but the mayor.
Yep.
Objections, anybody?
Nope.
I thought we were
And
already.
if the mayor decides he wants to join us, welcome.
One but the mayor out. Okay, what was, go ahead, continue.
From Convention Tourism Chamber of Commerce, likewise, all those awards, winter galas, State of the Village, golf outings, all that, out but the mayor.
Mayor only?
Yep.
Well, none of that is us.
Yeah, I don't know.
We're already out of that.
But
No,
when
we have
you've
like the
got-
economic, if you look at, there's a number of them, like the golf outing, there's
5.
package 5, and then dinner only 2. And so that's any combination, so all those numbers afterwards, the
Yeah.
State of the Village for 12, that's 12 people.
Economic
Who
Outlook,
were
5.
those people?
Who
Because
went? Because I know I've been
you and I
paying.
paid for our own
Right.
golf and
I
dinner.
paid my own tab. Who went?
We might not have paid out that, but that's
Take
what,
'em out.
that's
Get 'em
what
out
was
then. We don't need
able
'em.
to be
Out.
in there.
Gone.
That's what was budgeted.
Out.
Gone.
Mayor only on all of those. Okay, mayor only on all those? No, do I hear any objections? I need a
Oh,
gavel.
we just need them.
Do, on any of those, and I'm looking at the State of the Village, where we
Oh.
need our head of the departments there? I mean, I can't speak for that. The State of the Village, do we need the head of the department there?
We actually talked about
Did
this.
that go? I don't know.
Just to kind of give you some idea, when we were looking through this, we realized that there was an inconsistency in how we were budgeting for department heads to go to this, and we kind of alluded to it. And what we tentatively discussed as a staff is that we would give department heads some money in each of their budgets to select a few things to go to, not a lot of money. And it would also be, there are certain department heads, our chiefs and our economic development director, as well as our village manager, are the ones that are out there the most
need
with
to
a
be
lot
there.
of
Should
this.
be
So
there.
they would have a little bit more than, say, myself, who
And they should
doesn't
be
go
there.
to as many,
Okay.
right?
Yeah, I wanna make sure we don't
So we're
cut
coming up
that
with a
out.
consistent plan for that. That would not be included in here.
It would
Okay.
be in their own department?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
So when we say cut this out, we're not cutting out the department?
No,
Okay.
no.
Okay, so we're taking-
Further on, you'll see that in their budgets.
Yes, exactly.
What is the cost for the State of the Village?
I think it's $20.
Yeah.
No, I mean for putting it all on.
I don't know, we don't do that. The State of the Village Chamber.
But it's all on the
Yeah,
chamber.
yeah,
Okay.
chamber.
Dues and subscriptions, that's where I think DuPage mayors and managers dues, debt service stays, U.S. Conference of Mayors, Metro Caucus. The tree consortium, I think maybe we can get out of the tree consortium.
That's our membership fee that allows us to purchase the trees through the particular.
Oh, so you get the bulk rate?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all that really is.
Then I think we should keep that.
Sell me on the U.S. Conference of Mayors and why we need to belong to that. I definitely believe IML and DuPage. I think homegrown, what is the benefit of belonging to a national organization? What has it done for us?
A lot of the
What have we gotten?
mayors belong to both organizations and did attend both conferences.
But what do we get from it? What has it done for us? What have we benefited?
Well, we participate in some of their programs, like the climate change program, that was an initiative of theirs. Obviously, they're a significant lobbying group, just like
Okay.
IML is, so.
I just want to be sure there's value in everything we're belonging to, because
You're right.
we belong to a lot. I mean,
There's much more
$82,000
value
worth.
to IML and
IML and DuPage, I think there's no way we could ever give those up.
Well, you've got Senior Citizens Council at 17,000.
That's in there,
so
yeah.
that's- It's kind of
But that's the
different in
reduced
there.
rate.
That is a reduced rate.
Right.
Okay, and I don't want to be the other side. I agree with trustee Fleming. Is that something we bump up?
I don't want to cut Senior Citizen Council.
No.
No,
my
but bump
question
up,
is
because it's been cut.
Bumping it up
It was
because
cut
of the hits they're
significantly.
taking all over the place.
If
That's
we're
what
able
they
to
said,
save
we'd like to bump it up.
on some of the other items, I
Right.
mean, I know we want to try to save, but that's when I agree with you.
Right.
Well, we're still putting in, some villages aren't, so I think that we
That's-
leave it here for now.
Yeah, we'll come back
What
to
do we,
it and
what
address
do
it.
we lose by cutting it down?
Well, we could mark it and just see how much we cut out.
Okay.
and then-
Right.
Yeah,
And then we can
yeah,
figure
see
out
if we
what we're going to
can,
put back to it.
Okay.
the
We
contact
should
that I've had
review
with
it.
the supervisors of the Senior Citizen Council is that Westmont residents are served and benefited more
Right.
than quite a number of other communities that belong to it, and
A lot
I
of
think
meals here.
Prioritized based on.
we need
We're helping our own.
to keep that in mind
Right.
Yeah.
as well.
And it, happens right here at the Park District. It's
Right.
run out of there, and
So let's see what we can cut,
Four
and maybe we
days.
can,
Get rid
Maybe-
of some of the other stuff and put more money back into it.
maybe what we get out of the chamber, when we reduce the chamber cost, could go into that. and-
Yeah, because we've even
Offset
got our
that.
$800 dues to the chamber on top of our gift.
Now, wait a minute.
We'll put a list on there and put the DuPage senior citizens to revisit, kind of a revisits list.
What's,
That's
what,
fine.
the chamber, is that 1,400, is that our dues?
800.
800.
800, yes.
What's the 1,400?
Where do you see 14?
where do you see
Oh, up
that?
at the top, chamber,
What's the
on the
1,400?
bottom, in the middle.
Chamber,
right here. IML, then
Right
it
in
says
the middle.
chamber,
There
1,400.
twice.
right under IML.
Chamber publications.
Oh, chamber 1,400. What do we have, what's that one?
Chamber
Spencer?
publications?
I don't know. what
No,
is
no,
that?
publications is the list of
No,
things
that's
underneath.
Okay.
Okay, but
So
what's?
chamber,
Chamber's
1,400?
1,400, and then 800.
Who's the 800?
I don't know,
Down here.
you know what, we
What is our
will
membership in that
take
round?
a look at that.
Oh, I see it.
No,
We give them over $50,000 a year, and we pay them a membership on top of that?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
sometimes.
Yeah, that's what Pat's been saying.
And I believe that's the 800. We will look into what the 1,400 is.
Yeah, and it's goofy.
Scratch it.
I said, we should, if we're giving them a lot of money, we shouldn't
Go
have to pay.
negotiate that one.
Okay, back to you, I'm sorry.
That's
I
okay.
cut you off.
No, I'm
Right.
just
You're on-
going down
you're on
here and
miscellaneous
inciting
services.
riots. Then we want to, what about the DuPage Convention and Tourism Bureau at 30?
As high as that is, in these economic times, I think at least I felt a more justification that our businesses would benefit, and of course, if our businesses, all of them benefit, we benefit.
Yep.
So I don't
Yeah,
know that I
agree,
want
'cause
to cut
that's a
that one
lot
out just
less.
yet.
It's a lot less than what it has been in the past, isn't it, Lisa?
It goes down with the revenue.
No, it's a little more.
No, as the revenue goes down, it's a
down, it
revenue
goes down.
based
It's a
formula.
revenue-driven
It does go down.
Yeah.
Product.
It had,
Yep,
Yeah, I thought so.
I don't know what the rest of, I don't know what the rest of the board feels. but-
yep, leave it
I think we
alone.
keep it.
Yeah, I'll at least it for this year, and let's keep an eye on it, but I think they've publicized us as much as they possibly
Yeah.
can.
Then we get to the Christmas wreaths and decorations for 8,000.
Is it Grinch time?
Well, the
I
idea
got
of the
some
park
red ribbon
district,
downstairs, we could tie it on the.
I mean, if the idea of the park district is going to try to work out putting stuff downtown, do we need to do that then?
Right.
I know that's not a full-fledged definite, but I would say.
Can you imagine
What?
doing a little mini Christmas parade and no decorations? At least, is a tree in here? No, that's a park district doing
Yeah,
a tree.
that's a
Okay. At least our
Well,
tree
yeah, I hate to be
lighting
the
will stay.
Grinch. I'm just thinking if we, because you want some decorations downtown. If the park district moves some of the lighted things down there,
We cut
The
it.
businesses.
is that not going to?
This is already halved, yeah.
Yeah.
I know,
Already
yeah,
have.
it was
Businesses
well,
decorated so they could be part of the competition. And we can always ask the elementary schools if they would like to help decorate in their truly original ways and have all the windows painted. in
Assign each school a
various
pole.
things. So I think there's other ways to do it.
So is there a recommendation to possibly reduce or eliminate?
I think eliminate.
Eliminate.
What about the cost of
Objections?
decorating Mary Egan Park and the railroad station, the fountain? Who pays, how much of that comes, is that?
Is that the
I mean, it's
2,000?
just like having a tree decorated with lights. Don't we have all those lights? I mean,
Staff
we can
can
do
do
that, our
that.
staff can do that, right?
We do have to periodically replace them. Steve, you want to come?
Steve
in?
May, Public Works Director.
Going to talk.
Some costs associated with
Come
it.
on
What's ours
now.
and what's the park district pay?
We own a great supply,
Where do we
but
get
there's
the-
a certain quantity that gets damaged every year or needs to be replaced or fixed. So the $2,000 portion is for pretty much Mary Egan Park and the tree.
Oh, okay.
Does that include staff time?
No, just supply.
Just supplies?
You do it
I'd like to
during
keep downtown like that, get rid of the wreaths, keep the 2,000 for, that's part of holidays is to light the tree and all that, so.
Okay, so keep the 2,000 for Christmas decorations and remove the 6,000 for wreaths.
We'll be Grinches, but not super Grinches.
Yes.
Could we have a
Partial.
sponsorship going? People can sponsor wreaths and put them up.
Sure.
How about like the plants that the business owners were going to put in?
Maybe the garden club or somebody would be
about
interested
the
in
same.
spearheading that. That's a great idea.
Why don't we ask the Downtown Business Alliance to run that one?
Can we, if we're going to put off strategic planning, can we put off the $1,000 room rental for the strategic planning conference?
No.
Now you know.
Anyone opposed to leaving it?
Retirement gifts and cakes is $2,600?
That's all the retirement things, sympathy. There's a multitude of things in there. That's
well,
the general.
Flowers
Yes.
if somebody is
Yes,
hurt.
get well.
Is also the service plaque awards for
Yes,
employees.
that's the retirement gifts and stuff.
I know, but I think that's important to keep.
I agree.
Truly.
Don't touch it.
I agree.
I
Wow, we're
I'm
through
just
one
asking.
department.
I'm just asking.
I know.
It's a division. It's not a department.
A division. Then we have the clerk's office division.
Okay.
Gosh, what time it is?
I know.
And we got, okay, so how do we want to proceed? Are we going to exceed our time? Are we going to go past our time?
8 minutes?
Okay, I think you can get through clerks in 8 minutes. Clerks is pretty good.
I don't know.
8 minutes.
Oh, Jenny, you ready? You ready, Jenny?
That's right.
What's that?
We have a third meeting set up if we need.
No, there's not. I can tell you, there's not a whole heck of a lot in here. They've already made reductions in conferences and training of $4,460, and the only increase that they had significant was $1,500 to take into consideration outstanding taxi cab coupons that there's an expense for that we hadn't had before. So, right, because they're still out there and still coming in, so we had failed to,
Are those ever going to end?
probably not.
Who knows? We don't have an expiration.
I think somebody's selling them on eBay too, I'm not sure.
They must be.
The senior citizens really treasure those,
Yes.
because I can remember my father had a number of those that he bought, and he kept very close track of those all the time, so when he needed it, so he would, if he were alive, he'd still have them today.
And people, I think, bequeath them to their relatives.
I think so.
Jenny, I know when you go to your meetings, you always pay. So why do we have a monthly meeting in there for $300?
You jumped ahead.
We're sending a staff
Page
person?
clerks? It's on page 2.
so he goes.
So we pay for him to go.
Yeah. I don't-
Which one, which meeting you looking at?
I was looking at the clerks' conferences.
Yeah, there's the IIMC conference, there's only one in there. The MCI Academy and the spring seminar, there's only one. And then the DuPage Clerks monthly meetings for 300. And Steve does go to some of those as well, correct?
Well, he's the treasurer. He has to go.
Oh, that's right. So he
He
goes
does
to them.
have to go.
I think those are appropriate because I know a lot of the things that are presented at the clerks' conferences are necessary, so.
Well, that's the only way we can get certified or
Right.
registered or anything, is to go to those.
And then all they have in the dues and subscriptions are the municipal clerks of DuPage, Illinois,
all the
the
regular
Bureau
ones.
of Business License Officials, and the Institute of Municipal Clerks.
The
For total-
International Institute, so if they don't
International.
speak English, they can't help us.
So,
Hey, cut
no
a lot out of
objections to
that
clerk
budget, Jimmy.
department?
I don't think we can cut it anymore.
We got him.
Filing cabinets, you could cut the filing.
Yeah, what's with the filing cabinet?
That has to do with FOIA.
That does.
The new FOIA laws require the maintenance of hard copy records of much more rejects and everything.
We don't have any old file cabinets we can use.
We're looking, and if we find one, we won't buy it, but there's a need for storage on those.
And everything that we turn over, we have to
We've
keep
got
a
some in there,
file
but it
on
needs to be
that too, in
accessible.
paper.
and
It's like police evidence.
Because if there's a request, we have to dig them out real quick. So there's an accessibility issue, We have to respond to those in such a short time now.
Frank's got extra.
I can imagine what it looks like, Frank.
He's kicked it a couple times.
Here's what it looks
Are
like.
the drawers open? Is it as nice as your, let me just ask, is it as nice as your curtains in your office? Yeah.
How many years?
20 plus, your curtains, right?
Are they in the budget for new curtains?
No, he asked like 3 years ago and it's been
Lisa, can I ask, who's still using a typewriter?
We do. I know, it's hilarious, isn't it? We still do have forms that have to be filled out, and sometimes in triplicate, and we have to have one typewriter shared. Yeah. So, I know the police department has a couple. Yeah, and the ED does too. We don't do maintenance on a lot of them. When they die, we just send them out to pasture, try to sell them out. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I know, it's hard to believe.
Can we start fresh next time with Glenn? Because,
Yeah, I don't think you're going to zip through IT as quickly as clerk's department.
our eyes would be crossing by the time we.
Right, and since we have 4 minutes left. All right. Anything to sum up all of this? Anything you haven't mentioned that you would like staff to do before our next meeting and we continue? Anything I haven't explained correctly or?
God, you guys did such a great job.
Lisa, is this report, I don't know why, it just seems so much clearer to me this year than in past year. I mean, last year I thought was good, and the year before I thought, and this year, for some reason, it just seems...
We try to get it more and more every year by adding stuff, and a lot of that we just take when you have questions. We try to go, okay, if you had this question this year, you'd probably have it next year.
It seems very well...
Probably just getting more used to the format now. This is our 4th year. I did the 7, 8, 9. So, yeah, so we've got 4 years now of doing it. So
She's got us trained now.
Maybe that's it, I'm now trained.
no. Actually, the budget document is based on the information in the format that it seems communicates well with you guys and is clear and concise for you to understand. That's how we build it. It's designed for you guys.
Are we stopping at the...
I believe we're calling a halt to budget workshop, day number 1.
We finished early.
Anything else?
We finished early.
We could say that.
Are we going to
Anything else?
executive session, or...?
We could say that.
Well, given how late it is, I would recommend, I guess, we postpone it.
It's going to be just as late the next time, if not later.
And we
But if it's Thursday, we could go into executive on Thursday then.
It's up to you.
Okay.
I'd be happy to do it.
I'm fine if you want to do it.
I don't mind doing
on
it.
Thursday.
On Thursday?
Oh, doing it now or?
Oh, we can do it now.
I'm doing it now, right?
That's fine.
I don't mind.
Fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
Motion to go executive session?
Second.
We need to say what it's for, Ron?
Yeah.
Personnel.
Personnel. We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Trustee Forsley.
Yes.
Trustee Emery.
Yes.
Trustee Scott.
Yes.
Trustee Fleming.
Yes.
Trustee Klebanow.
Yes.
Trustee Seneca.
Yes.
Thank you. We're made it through the first budget discussion. This meeting is adjourned to executive session regarding personnel.